I've always said the purpose of a goal is not necessarily to accomplish it, but to become the man that attempts it. See, the only way you'll believe something in your heart is by experiencing it. The only way you'll ever experience it is by stepping into the uncertainty of something that demands more than you think you're worth. But man, when you experience it, now your subconscious mind believes it, and it keeps rising up to align with what you're saying consciously. Because you can say all you want, oh, I'm going to make $1 million this year. Until you experience something that makes you feel that you're worth $1 million a year, you're never going to get it. So I've always said you got to believe something in your heart before you actually have it. You got to believe that you're worth $1 million a year before you actually have it. The only way you'll believe that is by stepping into the uncertainty of something that demands more than you think you're worth. Succeed at it, your mind starts to believe, oh, wait a minute, maybe I am worth $1 million. This is what I said earlier. Most people will never attempt it because they don't want to go through the uncertainty. It's so scary, right? It's so uncomfortable that they don't even want to try it. Well, if you never try it, you'll never know.
Welcome to the Strategic Life Podcast, where we cut the fluff and get strategic. And today we're going to get strategic with an incredible man who I'm blessed if you're watching this video right now. And if you're not, please watch the video to see this incredible house we're in. We're in this man's house, but this was once just a dream for him. He probably couldn't even imagine to have a house like this and a life like this and a beautiful relationship. And that's what we're going to dive in today. You know, this man has built his success from the ground up. He was at a point where he was living in a house when he was just around 10 years old, getting woken up at night from the cockroaches in the house because that's all they had in their life. And he knew that he wanted to take care of his family, to build something bigger, and his faith with God took him the whole way. So there's so much we're going to dive in. We're going to dive into business, success, all that in between. And I want to introduce you to the man, the legend, Mr. Edwin Arroyave.
Hey, Jake, thanks for having me on the show. I'm so excited to be here.
Brother, I'm so happy to have you here.
Yeah.
And you know what? People look at you right away and they're like, all right, who is this stunner, right? Who is this guy, right? I'm sure you guys have seen his wife on the Beverly Hills Housewives, things like that. But man, that's not how you always started, huh?
Nope, not at all.
Just fill us in, because we're going to go very strategic. And we were actually like behind the camera talking for an hour, and I was like, he was telling me all these things, and I was like, dude, we need to be mic'd up already. And he's like, trust me, I'll be able to talk again. But application. But we know that, application only goes so far. It's the story.
Of course.
How did you even get here today? Tell us about the origins of who Edwin is.
Of course. I was born in Bogota, Colombia. My parents and I came to the United States when I was 6 years old in search of that American dream. However, that American dream quickly became an American nightmare because due to some unfortunate circumstances, our family lost everything we had. So much so that at the age of 15 years old, I had to become the man of the house, the head of household.
And then what made you have to be the head of the house? Like, why did you have to take that role at such a young age?
Yeah, so 2 weeks after coming to the U.S., our home gets raided by law enforcement, and both of my parents ended up in jail. I and my sister, I have an older sister, ended up in a foster home. And then luckily for us, our parents came out. They got acquitted of all charges, but then every year for the next 4 years, our home would get raided by law enforcement. And finally on that last year, my dad was taken away. He was taken away and put away for a long time. It was, and I remember him just, the cops were nice enough to allow me to speak to him. And his last words to me then were, son, you need to become the man of the house. I need you to take care of this family.
And how old were you?
I was 10. And then he did leave us some money.
Oh my gosh.
But literally 2 years after that, we lost all the money we had. And that's how we ended up in a city called Huntington Park.
Okay.
It's not to be confused with Huntington Beach.
Right,
or Hancock
yeah.
Park, little opposite. And at first we were okay. We found a 3-bedroom apartment.
Okay.
But then we couldn't afford the rent. So then we had to rent 2 of the bedrooms in the apartment. And that's when my siblings' mother and I were stuck living in this tiny little bedroom with no windows, a lot of darkness. But what I do remember is my mom giving me a lot of love. She was always pouring into me, always telling me I was going to do something great, always telling me that God was with me and that one day I'd do so well that I'd be able to talk to people about how my faith was the number one reason why I succeeded.
So even in that toughest time, you still had like your mom like pouring that belief, the faith,
All the time.
like
Yeah. I mean, that was so huge for me. I mean, that
Wow.
built a confidence in me because I was very shy. I was very timid. And in fact, when I was 15 years old, I was lucky enough to get a job working at a call center, which was not ideal with how shy and timid I was. But I quickly got the courage to do this job that I did not want to do in my desperation to help my family. Because like you said earlier, I was just tired of my mom not being able to pay the rent at the end of the month. I was tired of us not eating at the end of the month. I was tired of my siblings, mother and I living in this tiny little bedroom. And then I was just tired of the roaches waking me up in the middle of the night. So the avoidance of pain basically caused me to take action on something that really demanded more than I was worth. And I was very shy and I was very timid, but the one thing I did have going for me at a very young age is I had huge hope. I had huge God-sized dreams. At 12 years old, I became obsessed with just wanting to make 100 grand by the age of 21 years old.
where did that come from? How does a 12-year-old who literally had a decent life and then the house got raided, you go into this place, you then have to, have roommates or staying all in the same room. Like, how does a 12-year-old even get that type of hope?
I think number one, the promise that I made to my dad.
Yeah.
I knew
What
that
was
that I'd take care of the family
Yeah.
eventually. And so I knew I had to do that. Like, I wasn't going to let him down on that. He was my hero and he did a lot for us. Another person that always showed me love. So I was like, I need to do this for my dad. And so that was number one. Number two is the only successful person I knew made 100 grand, which at the time my older sister was dating someone that was doing pretty good for himself. He sold cars. And I remember saying to myself, man, worst comes to worst, I'll sell cars, but I'm going to make 100 grand a year by the time I'm 21.
So you saw that. That was the only thing you saw that made sense on what 100,000 a year looks like.
Yep. So when I started working at the call center, I thought to myself, well, I'm going to, I think the wisdom that God has given me all these years, I focused on what I could control.
Yeah.
What I could control was how hard I worked and how hard I prepared. And I prepared like no one else. And then I had faith that God would put the right people in front of me.
At 15 years old?
Yeah.
Was this like conscious? Like, were you actually like connecting with God or doing your prayers at that time? Were you hearing, things? Like, what was your actual conscious awareness of that at 15?
It's really my mom.
Yeah.
A lot of my success,
That's
I think,
beautiful.
have come through my mom's prayers. And I just thought to myself, I know God's with me. So I know it seems impossible, but I know he'll put the right people in front of me to make the impossible possible. And then I just started focusing on what I can control. And sure enough, by the age of 18 years old, I became the youngest manager in company history, but not because I was the most talented or most deserving. The people that were in front of me who had way more seniority, way more talented, going to college and everything, way better communicators than I was, all got fired, 6 of them, for doing things they weren't supposed to be doing. And I got my chance, and that was probably one of the biggest moments in my life because it's the first time that I truly began to believe in myself. And the reason I think that's important is because you could only receive what your mind can accept. And if your mind can't accept something, it's never going to get it. So the idea is to build your self-worth. And there's 2 ways that you build your self-worth.
Yeah, what's that?
One is association. You start associating with people that are more successful than you are. You're just going to rise up. Now, some people might say, well, Edwin, I don't have people that are doing better than me. That's where personal development comes in, because personal development allows you to associate with some of the most successful people in the world. And when you take their experiences and you start to apply them, you could manifest who they are. In a couple of years, you'll actually be better than them.
Oh my gosh.
And then the second part is the example I gave. You put yourself in a circumstance that demands more than you think you're worth, and then when you succeed at that circumstance, your identity goes through the roof. And that was my situation. I'm 15 years old. I put myself on the circumstance of becoming a manager by the age of 18. That demanded way more than I thought I was worth. When I succeeded at it, I was like, wait a minute. I don't see any other 18-year-old making $1,000 a week. I don't see another 18-year-old, at least that I knew at the time, managing 40 people.
Which was significant earnings at that time, and being in Huntington Park, like.
Yeah. So my mind began to accept.
You know what I was doing at 18 years old? I was playing basketball, playing video games, and I was the golden child of 3, and
Nice.
I had no work experience, my friend. I didn't start my journey until I was 23.
Wow. Okay.
So you're doing that at 18?
Well, it's so funny because sports is such an important piece, at least for me. It teaches you how to compete. It taught me that if you work hard enough, you can get what you want. And I unfortunately stopped playing sports at 15 because I had to go back to work. But I remember just those wins that I got in sports. And I was like, man, I know I don't have the most talent, but I'm going to outwork everybody. And then some way, somehow, I'd end up, starting. And those little wins started to build a little confidence in me to, again, take on things that demanded more than I thought I was worth. But really, when you think about that, right? If something demands more than you think you're worth, that means that it's probably going to be very scary.
Yes.
It's going to make you very uncomfortable, and it means you're probably not going to want to do it.
Yeah.
That's why I think step one in succeeding is you got to have hope. Hope is basically your dreams. You got to have some God-sized dreams. And I believe you should always have hope, because hope is basically something that you're looking forward to. And if you don't have anything that you're looking forward to, then you have despair. This is why I think no matter how old or how successful you are, you always have hope.
So the antithesis to hope is despair. So
Yeah.
it's like if you're feeling like you're in depression, or you feel despair, you feel lost, it's find something that you can have hope or look forward to, a promising future, a promising vision, a compelling vision, whatever that is. Would you say that's also like hope, like something that leads you forward?
100%, right? And I always said your dream should be so big and so audacious so that when you accomplish them, people will know they were so far beyond your own capacity that God's hand had to be in it.
That's beautiful.
And this is why I think, the dreams, the real dreams, not the ones you settle for, the dreams that God places in your heart, He didn't put them there so you could accomplish them, but He put them there to draw you closer to Him so that you can accomplish them together. Because at some point you realize, man, I won't be able to do this on my own. And that's why one of your greatest validations of your faith is coming through on your dreams.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so crippling to give up on your dreams, because when you do, there's a part of you that will never get to as close to your faith as you would have with who I believe is the number one partner in business, which is Jesus.
Amen.
I'm a follower of Christ. So that's what's given me the confidence, right?
Yeah.
And see, if you're always playing it safe, you're literally squeezing God out of the formula.
Dude, let's hold on that right
Yeah.
there. That is something where, it's these big audacious dreams, like you said, and God doesn't put dreams in your life just so you could accomplish them. He puts the big ones that you have to realize that as a man, or a woman, or you're just a man in general, you cannot accomplish on your own.
Yeah.
And it's so funny, like I'm a nurse, I have a background in nurse, I love health, and so like I think about it as, in your body cannot function. Every single part of your body cannot function without these things called enzymes. And enzymes basically are what are like the keys that unlock, the potential of certain parts of your body working. And no matter how many good cells you have or how good function of the body, this is totally random, but that's just how my brain works.
Yeah.
You need the enzymes to activate whatever that response is. And that's the same thing with our lives with God. God's like, He's the enzyme, He's the key, He's the thing that fills the heart when people feel so void and they try to fill it with every other single thing and every other single belief or whatever it is. And we love, anyone that has a belief that is for a greater good and greater purpose, whether you believe in God or, how they say it all the time, the universe or whatever. But I love that because it truly does empower, hopefully, someone listening right now that you have to have such a big dream that it's okay that you don't achieve it, but it's a big enough dream to understand that you need something outside yourself to support you and get you there.
Yeah.
And that was your
back
life.
Where that came from is people think I'm talking about business when I say that. But really for me, it was my personal life, because I one day wanted to become a big family man. And my problem at the time when I was younger is I just loved women too much. And I knew that the only way I could make that happen was with God, because I knew I couldn't beat it on myself, right? For some people, because finances, by the grace of God, were always kind of easy for me, right?
Yeah.
But again, like I was saying, sometimes if you're always playing it safe, right? Because God-sized dreams always come with God-sized challenges. And if you always play it safe, and you only do the things that you know you're going to succeed, and you only do the things that you know, then there isn't really a need for God, right? But this is why I've always embraced uncertainty, because it's an uncertainty where my need for God gets heightened. It's an uncertainty where I know I'm going to grow. It's an uncertainty where He's always met me. And it's an uncertainty where we've always accomplished some great things together.
Wow. So what would you say for someone that is in a comfortable state? They could be making 6+ figures, maybe even 250,000. Maybe they're just not making much money, but they're happy in their sense. But they are in that safe space where they aren't challenging self. They're not pushing themselves in that uncertain space to grow, which we know that, with discomfort comes growth. What would you say for someone that can maybe change their paradigm a little bit, or test them to say, hey, you need to, like, if you want to get to the next level, you need to think about this, or you need to try this out. What would you say to that person that's kind of playing it safe?
Well, I think you just said it, right? It comes down to challenging yourself, right? And the thing about hope is that it always comes, that's why I said you always have to have hope. And hope always comes with its set of challenges. And like challenges, your job is to figure out what those challenges are, right? Because the only way you can grow, to your point, is if you challenge yourself. So I'm sure you've heard it, you're either growing or dying.
Yes.
Right? So
do you believe that? Like,
of course.
100%.
Yeah, nothing stays the same.
Nothing stays the same. No
you're
plateau.
Either getting better or you're getting worse.
People think they're plateauing, but they're actually decreasing 1 degree a day. But it feels like a plateau until one day it just has a breaking point.
Right. So when you think about it, right, there's only 2 things that give you fulfillment in life, and it's not money. It's contribution, which is why you want to do more, so you can give more, and the second one is growth.
Oh, amen.
Well, the only way you
Did you learn that from Tony?
I did.
Oh, my man.
So the only way you can grow is if you challenge yourself. That means you got to challenge yourself at all times, right? So that's why I've always wanted, literally, this is the story of my life, I've always embraced pain. I've always embraced difficulty. The difference between successful people, or let's call them the average and the elite, is the elite can take more pain. But life and pain are inseparable. In fact, if you really think about it, when you were first born, you gave your mom the biggest pain she's ever had in her life,
that's true.
followed by the biggest joy that she's ever had in her life, right? Same thing with Jesus, number one example for you followers of Christ, right? He gave the most pain so that we can have the ultimate salvation. So life and pain are literally inseparable, and if you can embrace pain, you will separate yourself from the competition, because when you embrace pain, you'll cultivate what I believe are the biggest skill sets that you need to sustain success for a long time, which is grit, which is really the character to resolve, right? The difference between average and elite is the elite can get things done even though everything around them is crumbling down. Fortitude, the courage in adversity, to stand in the pain, not to run away from it, not to go around the pain, the courage in adversity to just stand there and push forward. And then the third skill set is resiliency, the ability to get knocked down and get it back up immediately, not a month later, not 2 weeks later, immediately bounce back. And see, when you cultivate these skill sets, the beauty of that is no one could ever take that away. And the reason you sustain it is because, again, life and pain are inseparable, and it's inevitable that you're going to get punched in the face. So if you don't build those skill sets, you'll lose everything. And that's why you don't want things to be easy. Because if it's easy, you'll never develop the muscles that you'll need to sustain success when life punches you in the face. That's why if you look at all the lottery winners, they all go broke. Why? Because it's easy money. And then when life comes and punches them in the face, they lose it all. That's happening, unfortunately, with crypto guys right now, where it came too easy for them. Now that they're getting punched in the face, they don't know how to deal with adversity, so they lose it, right?
Wow.
So it's why you want to seek tough things, difficulty. You want to embrace the pain. And as long as you know that life and pain are inseparable, you'll look at pain as a good thing because we're supposed to go through it.
And that's a belief right there I think a lot of people need to hear, is maybe they've known it, they didn't fully understand it, but life and pain are inseparable in the sense of, like, Pain will always, no matter how perfect your life is, no matter how secure, how great of a family, how much money, how much happiness or personal development, pain is still, there will be things, no matter what level it is. I'm sure Tony Robbins at 60 years old, he felt massive pain when the pandemic happened, and he lost his identity for a quick minute of like, I've been doing these in-person events for 40 plus years, changing millions of people's lives. He definitely felt pain when he has it all, but he had grit, which let's go through that. So it's grit, fortitude, and resiliency.
Yep.
Those are the three things that can have you handle any.
And the reason we call them skill sets is because you can develop them. They're not traits. Traits you're born with.
Yeah.
Skill sets, you can develop them. And the only way you develop them is by getting knocked down, getting back up, by going through the pain. So, I'm a byproduct of thinking bigger, right? I've always had that, where I was just always thought big. I'm a byproduct of just having faith, having the confidence that God was always with me. And then, stepping into the uncertainty and dealing with the pain. Because when you step into the uncertainty of something that demands more than you think you're worth, you're going to have to go through pain, right? And that's why when you have some God-sized dreams, you're going to have some God-sized challenges. And when you have God-sized challenges, self-sufficiency is no longer an option, because when you're going after your dreams, you better believe in a higher power when the resistance comes, because there's going to be a lot of resistance when you're coming out, you're going after your dreams.
So if someone's facing a God-sized challenge right now, breakup, financial bankruptcy, lost in this world, they lost their job, whatever it is, what can you say to them? Because what you shared is very powerful. But what can you say for those people that are going through a very tough challenge listening to this?
Understanding that it's a temporary discomfort. It eventually goes away. A lot of times we start thinking it's never going to go away, and what happens is you paralyze yourself. The fear paralyzes you, right? But if you just start taking action, massive action towards that worry, and not worry about what seems impossible, focus on what you can control, God will start putting the right people in place so the impossible becomes possible. Most people let the fear paralyze them. They went through a tough time, and now they're just in bed for months feeling sorry for themselves, right? Versus what you should do immediately is start taking action. I mean, I went through that in 2020. I just literally went through that. I got punched in the face for the second time in my life. I've only been punched twice in the face in my career. This was the second time. What both have in common is both times I sort of started to relax, and when you relax, you will get punched in the face. But this time around, it was fourth quarter of 2020. We were on fire, meaning the company was crushing it. And then within a 3-month span, I got hit with the perfect storm. The company that I do business with, which is Brinks Home Security, basically says, hey, your creation cost is a little too much. We're going to have to pay you less, about $350 less per deal, right? We do about 30,000 accounts, so you can do the math on that. Followed by, at the same time, my number one sales team gets recruited by one of my biggest competitors. Third, I lost another 25% of my sales team to solar, because at the time, all the solar companies went after my sales reps, because my sales reps are some of the best salespeople in the world. And I didn't have a solar company, right? And then I probably lost 15% of crypto. So Yikes. The worst thing that could happen to a company when you're scaling is lose 65% of your production, because when you lose 65% of your production, you can't even cover your overhead.
Yeah.
I mean, I was negative 50 grand a week.
Jeez.
I'm going like this. I had two options, right? I could feel sorry for myself and let it all go to crap, or I can just start taking massive action. That's what I did. I said, I don't know how, it's the story of my life.
Please, yeah.
I've always said, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but we're going to figure it out. We're going to start a solar company, and we're going to get that 25% of the people back. That number one sales team that left, they're going to come back. I know they are. So we're going to end up in good terms. I could have sued them. I could have gone, played the bad guy part. They all had non-competes. I had confidence in what I brought to the table, and I knew that what they were offering them at that other company they weren't going to be able to keep it.
Right.
And I knew they'd come back. And then I said to myself, I'm going to work harder than I've ever worked. And I just talk about massive action. I was working 15, 18 hours a day, taking phone calls on Sundays, Saturdays. I mean, you'll ask my wife when we leave here, 11 o'clock at night, you want to talk to me on a Sunday? Let's pick up the phone. I mean, I was just nonstop. And I remember thinking to myself, and I think it was the Holy Spirit, honestly, talking to me, because it's what helped me during that tough time.
Yeah.
And it was this voice in my head saying to me, you think it's supposed to be easy? Like, you think you're going to be a $500 million company, a $1 billion company, and it's supposed to be a cakewalk? Like, it's supposed to be hard. What you're going through is setting you up so you can get to that next level. And it was those words, that wisdom, that little voice in my head that gave me the confidence that I needed. And sure enough, and you know, people never knew that I was going through that, because I had to like stand tall.
Yeah, of course.
Right? Courage in adversity. Hey, we're good. You know,
which is a powerful, powerful characteristic of a leader, is even when things are in complete dismay, you cannot let your people see that. It doesn't mean you lie or deceit to them, but you hold strong so they can still have that hope, and then you're figuring it out in the back end, which is what you're doing.
And then, and then I'm sure 15 months later, October hits, that #1 sales team comes back.
No way.
By then, I've already started the solar company. All 25% of the solar guys came back. And by then, all these guys that I was working on, I wasn't getting immediate results. That's where that wisdom came in of it's supposed to be hard, because I was literally not getting results. 6 months later, 8 months later, 10 months later, 12 months later. I was getting a little better, but I wasn't getting close to getting back to where I was. Not even nearly close. Then all of a sudden, fourth quarter comes, boom, takes off like a rocket ship. We've had our best fourth quarter in company history last year, best first quarter in company history, best second quarter in company history. We'll have our best third quarter in company history. And the company is just on fire. What no one will probably see is all that pain that I had to go through. I mean, literally the most pain I've ever had to go through, right? It's that moment where you're like, man, is this it? Is this where I'm going down, right? And here's the thing too, I had to make a decision. Number one is, do I cut my staff in half, or do I have the faith that I can rebuild it again? And the decision really came down to my mission. I want to create the most 7-figure a year earners than any sales industry has ever created. Truth of the matter is, when that happened to me, I could have easily cut my staff in half, and I would have been making the kind of money that I'm used to. But that's not fun for me anymore. Like, I've been doing that for 23 years. Bro. What's fun for me now is I want to give people the same opportunity that I had, which was when I was 15 years old. What I didn't tell you is that I was so shy and timid that during interviews I'd start sweating. So the call center that I originally, that I got hired at, didn't originally hire me because I got so nervous. And like 16 previous interviews also didn't hire me because I, again, sweaty and get nervous, couldn't complete sentences, right? So my buddy says to me, hey, Edwin, they're hiring at the spot. I know they're going to hire you, because he knew my situation, right? Yeah. It's like, just show up, and I promise you they will hire you. So I get up, I go drive down there in my beat up Nissan Sentra. It's an 82, had no shocks, literally bouncing, right? I get to the place, right? And I'm already kind of hot because I had no air conditioning in my car. I still had the roll-ups, right? So I had the windows all rolled down. I'm like, God, please don't let me sweat. Start interviewing, drenched in sweat, right?
No way.
Can't complete sentences. I don't get the job. So now I'm discouraged. I'm like, just literally like, it's never going to happen. And as I'm walking to my car, I go to the restroom to just wash up. I was mad at myself. I remember just praying and saying, God, give me a chance. Help me get a job. I still get emotional sometimes when I talk about it. And I promise you, I'll work harder than anyone's ever worked in their life. So I walk out that restroom. There's a gentleman outside. He says, when do you start, kid? I said, I don't start. You guys are full. He says, no, we're not. He says, come with me. Takes me to the HR room, and he says, I need you to hire this kid. I need him to start tomorrow. That same person is the same person that 6 years later allows me, helps me start my own home security company. Wow. So I'm a firm believer that all people need in life is a shot. They need a system. They need a leader who believes in them, that's going to be patient with them, that's going to show them how to do it. And that's why I'm so passionate about what we do at my company.
Yeah.
You know, we're in the solar business. Yes, we're in the security business, but really we're a personal development company, leadership development company that just happens to be in the solar world, in the Brinks home security. I mean, in the security world. And you know, we want to create an environment where people are unleashed to fulfill their God-given potential, and we do that by helping people become the best version of themselves.
Man, I could just say, just like anyone listening to that story and doesn't get inspired by that, I don't even know what would inspire them. Because, and I have a question about that guy that was in the bathroom. Yeah. But the most beautiful thing about that, and I have to highlight this for people, is this was 2020, so 2 years ago. Yeah. Already a lot of success, beautiful houses, traveling the world, beautiful wife, family, like out from the outside already, you know, and people see you on the Housewives and all that stuff, so they see like this family's living it, they're successful. And most people didn't know about this story, this pain. Like, even at the highest, or I know you have new levels and you always have new levels, but even at a quote unquote high level people see you as, you went through a point that you said was one of the 2 biggest punches in the face in your entire life. Yep. And you shared that, and I just gotta make that so clear for people, and that inspires me, because I'm at a point now where I don't know what kind of pain will come in the future. I know there will be, but like, this gives me hope to understand that, like, you know what, when I do experience pain, it's not just me. It's people like that you have felt that too.
And I think, see, if you do nothing, you get nothing. But if you put so much effort into something, every cause has an effect. So when I was going through that tough time and I kept telling myself, it's supposed to be hard, it's not supposed to be easy, I did have that confidence, because I knew that just because I've done it before, right? When you put that kind of effort, and what effort I'm talking about is Monday through Saturday, Sunday, whatever it takes, that kind of effort, there's always going to be a return. Problem is, people quit right before the blessing comes. Yeah. And usually, right before the blessing comes the biggest freaking punch you'll ever have in your life. And then that derails you to go back to what you're used to. And again, because I've experienced so many times, and that's why you want to cultivate the pain. Because when you embrace the pain, you realize what it feels like, and you realize what's on the other side of it. But if you never go through the pain, you'll never realize what's on the other side of it, which is your freedom. Man. Right? So you have to go through, and I was going through it, I was like, man, I've been through this before. Okay. It has to be this hard. I know it seems like, to your point, the whole world's coming apart. There's no way I'm putting this much effort and I'm not going to get a return. And you know, sometimes it doesn't happen in 3 months, 6 months. For me, I didn't really see that return until 15 months later. Yeah. And then it just, boom, just skyrocket.
Take this and really, really understand this, because I believe it's almost like a natural law that when you have that biggest, you know, reward or blessing, there always will be that challenge, that punch in the face, the resistance. It's like, if we look at the natural laws, because I love to not just take a theory but put it into something that's factual. You look at when we have a rocket and we take off into space, the most amount of energy is right off when it gets taken off, but it has to break through the threshold of before it gets into zero gravity. And right when it's about to break in that threshold of when it hits the certain atmosphere, and now it's like, you know, the amount of energy it needs, it just coasts. Like, that's the same thing in life. But that threshold is like, it's like that's the biggest threshold, and if the rocket's not built properly, the rocket will implode, the rocket won't be able to make it, it'll have to go off. It's the same thing in life. When you are at that threshold, I see it as like almost like a bubble expanding as you're going through, and you're getting more and more resistance, or you have a rubber band pulling from behind, and you keep going, which you did, eventually that rubber band will snap and it'll push you off. But that's like, I feel like that's like a natural law, and people just really need to understand through your story that is, when you feel challenges, and you're so good at the quality questions. We'll get to the story with the guy. It's not saying, why is this happening to me? Or like, what am I going to have to do to not go bankrupt? Or, you know, all these scarcity things. You were probably playing through your mind of like, what do I have to do to get this going? How can I make this work where I'm not cutting off my people? Like, and that was the values you had.
Yeah.
But that's because you had that deep down drive that you knew that failure wasn't an option.
Everything is created out of the nothing. When you got nothing left and you empty the tank, that's where everything is created.
Oh, you're freaking inspiring.
And it literally is, I from experience, right? It's not just like I learned it from a text. It literally is.
You live it.
I went through it, and that's why you feel it from me.
And that's why I feel it, bro. This is incredible so far, and we're just touching the surface of what we're going to go into. But talk about this guy.
So but going back to faith real quick.
Yes, please.
I learned this from my pastors, one of my mentors, Ed Milet and Erwin McManus are two of my mentors, right? And I never, it's funny. You go to the Bible, and hopefully, if you haven't been to the Bible, and you're ever going to go to it, go to Proverbs. Proverbs is all about wisdom, and it'll give you all the success
From one of the
principles.
richest men in the world.
Exactly. And I've read Proverbs God knows how many times. I totally skipped, or it didn't resonate until I heard Erwin talk about Proverbs 24. It's 24:16. It says, "For the righteous will fall 7 times, but the wicked will fall when calamity strikes." Now, the word 7 doesn't literally mean 7. 7 in the Bible means infinity. Well, it means a lot of things. One of it is infinity. So for the righteous will fall 7 times.
Wow.
That means, because some people think, if I get closer to my faith, I don't have to go through pain. You can be as close to your faith as you want. You're going to go through pain.
Is this the one that he did a couple weeks ago on resiliency? And you sent me this.
Yeah, I sent you that.
Yeah, that was a beautiful message.
I mean, wow. I was like, wait a minute. Even if you're a man of faith, you got to go through pain.
Yeah.
But all you got to do is get up one more time. You fall 7 times, get up 8.
Man.
And he just said it so well that I was just like, oh, that's me. That's the story.
And Erwin's such a he's such an artist with his words, his wisdom. But
I learn from him all the time.
I like how he also gets into the true Greek meaning of things. And I didn't know that about the 7. It has one of the interpretations being infinity. So it means that you're always going to fall.
Yeah.
But you always will get back up if that's who you are. The wicked will be the ones that collapse when they have external pressure.
Yeah.
And this is something actually.
And it could even be when you're that type of person, like we said, wants everything easy. So you take shortcuts, you scam people. You're not about integrity because you're always looking for the easy way. Well, guess what? When life punches you in the face, boom, you're done. For the righteous will fall, but they get up 7. Fall 7 times, but they get up.
That's good. Even if you guys don't believe in in the Bible or whatnot, the Bible is just full of wisdom.
Full of wisdom.
It's truth in many different ways that you could still have a great life no matter what your belief is. And I think that one right there will be what people will be putting on their walls.
Yeah.
No matter what their faith is.
It's become one of my favorite ones now.
Proverbs 24:16. It's good.
Yeah.
So we're going to dive into your faith here shortly, but go back so we could keep this. There's so many areas. I'm like, dude, you're like a book of many chapters, and we could sit here for hours. Talk about this man that changed your life, where you met him in the restroom, or you guys were like at the same stall, like
so back to the story. So I become the youngest manager in company history, right? Well, part of the benefit, one of the perks of that, is I became the right hand of the VP of sales. He was the VP of sales. And sure enough, 3 years later, he comes into my office and he says, hey, I'm going to start this home security company and I'm going to resign. He says, I want you to help me build it. He says, look, I can't guarantee you the $70,000 a year that you make here. I was making some pretty good money back then. This is back in 99.
At 18 years old.
I'm now 21.
21.
Yeah.
You know how much money I was making at 21?
How much?
I had a full scholarship, so I guess that kind of
there you go.
made me money. But
paid for the college,
Yeah, once again, though, like you doing this at 21, it's insane.
And he says to me, he's like, I can't guarantee the $70,000 a year, but if you make this work, you can possibly double, triple, quadruple what you make here. And the thing about success, even though you got to go through pain, you don't have to be the smartest guy in the world, right? You just need common sense. And you need to have some drive.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I used. I used common sense. I said, this guy's making $250,000 a year. He's resigning because he thinks he can make millions in an industry that's untapped. Well, that makes sense. Second thing I thought was, if this guy's willing to mentor me how to start a company from the ground up, this is the mentorship I've been looking for. And the third thing I knew was that I was a huge dreamer. You know, I promised my dad at 10 years old I'd take care of the family. I promised my mom at 12 years old that one day I would buy her a dream house. And then I was a huge dreamer. You know, I was a kid that literally would ditch school and go to Rodeo Drive to go window shopping because I like fashion. And then I'd go to Hollywood Hills and Beverly Hills, and I'd be like, man, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but one day I'm going to end up living over here, right? So I knew I was a big dreamer. And then again, I used common sense. I said, is $70,000 a year going to make those dreams happen? And the reality was no. And then one of the things I did is I looked at the worst case scenario, because one of the ways that you eliminate fear is you look at the worst case scenario and you're okay with the outcome. So at the time, we went from Huntington Park to Southgate, a little better of an area, but I was still only a mile away, 2 miles away from Watts. And I thought to myself, if I fail miserably, I end up in the projects in Watts, but not that much different from that little apartment that I lived with without any windows.
And Watts
but
is
if
like
I make this
Compton,
work, Compton,
for people
South
that know,
Central.
yeah, like not a place you probably want to be in. And
but I said to myself, but if I make it work, I can make all these dreams happen. And so even though everybody was telling me, you're crazy for leaving a job that's paying you $70,000 a year with benefits. Because remember, at the time, I was paying for all my bills at my house. I had my siblings, mom, I paid for everything.
so you really were the man of the house.
I took the plunge, and you know, I've always said the purpose of a goal is not necessarily to accomplish it, but to become the man that attempts it. See, the only way you'll believe something in your heart is by experiencing it. The only way you'll ever experience it is by stepping into the uncertainty of something that demands more than you think you're worth. But man, when you experience it, now your subconscious mind believes it, and it keeps rising up to align with what you're saying consciously. Because you can say all you want, oh, I'm going to make $1 million this year. Until you experience something that makes you feel that you're worth $1 million a year, you're never going to get it. That's why I've always said you got to believe something in your heart before you actually have it. You got to believe that you're worth $1 million a year before you actually have it. The only way you'll believe that is by stepping into the uncertainty of something that demands more than you think you're worth. Succeed at it, your mind starts to believe, oh, wait a minute, maybe I am worth $1 million.
The purpose of the goal is not to just accomplish it, but it's to become the man or the woman that comes through it, that attempts it, and the journey that's to it.
Most people will never, it's what I said earlier, most people will never attempt it because they don't want to go through the uncertainty. It's so scary, right? It's so uncomfortable that they don't even want to try it. Well, if you never try it, you'll never know. And it's until you try it that you're like, wait a minute, I can't afford this. Like the first time I bought $1 million house, I was scared shitless. I was like, damn, can I really afford this or not? Like, I don't know if I could afford this. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, I can afford this all day long, right? If I would have never bought it, I would have never known, right? But if I would have let my self-worth been, oh man, the best I'm going to do is 600 grand a year, man. I'm $600,000 house. Well, good luck on that. And then I just took steps, right? I knew that your first house is never going to be your dream house, right? But it's a stepping one.
Yes.
And then from a $1 million house, I went to a $2 million house, to then a $5 million, and so on, you know?
This is a wake-up call for a lot of people. Your story is a wake-up call. There's a lot of people with your $70,000 story. There's a lot of people that have, quote unquote, the golden handcuffs. They're getting enough just to get by. They're getting the bills taken care of. They want maybe something bigger, but they're humiliated or said, don't do that, it's too risky, just like how you got that. And they stay in this handcuffs, feeling like they're in the jail, even though it's the most lavish looking handcuffs. And you just challenged a lot of people to look down at their hands, realize that they have their hands, but it's only limited of where they can move it because it's on the handcuffs. And you're saying, if you see success leaves clues, which this guy was successful, it makes common sense that if this guy truly believes he's going to leave his $250,000 a year job to go do something bigger, that must be something that you could believe in, just like how so many people believe in your mission. Like they wouldn't probably be joining the company as rapidly if they didn't see you in the front lines still sharing it. It was the belief that you brought and being able to have the ability to outwork anyone. So I want that to just challenge someone right now that's listening to understand that if you have the golden handcuffs, and I've personally experienced this with people that I consult and train and work with, and they want to go from a corporate job to building their own business, and That's the toughest thing, but you're a living example. So let this example, let him be the guy that he saw that was successful and took the step. Let this be right now the example that you say, hey, I need to go find someone to mentor or to be mentored by. I need to go find some courses to learn this. Because if he can do it, then you can do it. And we've heard that before, but it's the truth.
I'll give you, here's another example, since
please.
we both love sports and basketball, right? My favorite athlete of all time is Kobe Bryant. I remember in '96, he was young, I was managing all these people, and I was like, he gave me so much confidence because I saw his willingness to attempt things, the desire to not be afraid. And if you remember that his rookie year when he played against Utah in that playoff game, he shot 4 air balls in a row with the game on the line.
Yes.
Got so much heat from that. Like, why are you shooting? Why didn't you give the ball to Shaq? Most people don't recover from that.
Yes.
What did he do the next year? He shot it even more. And eventually, if you shoot enough, you'll start making them. When you make them, you believe it. Right?
It's a great example.
So you have to experience it before you believe it, and the only way you believe it is by taking shots.
Yeah.
But if you don't take the shots, you'll never experience it. You'll never give yourself a shot.
Do you have any personal stories with Kobe? Any connection or things that
I
you had
did
with him?
do a speaking engagement with Kobe about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago before he passed away. I remember I have this, you saw the painting I have of Kobe Bryant. I thought about taking it with me so he could sign it. And I noticed his wife was following my wife. And I thought to myself, if I take it, I'm going to fan out. I'm going to be friends with this guy one day.
Yeah.
I'm going to wait till we become friends.
You'd rather be friends than fans.
Yeah,
I love that.
And I'm not going to take it, right? And then obviously that tragedy happens, and it was painful. I cried. I get emotional thinking about it too.
Yeah.
He gave me a lot of confidence at a young age, because I saw him like just attempting stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this guy's a rookie. And he doesn't care. He's just like, wow, I'm going to be the next Jordan. And it gave me that confidence.
Did you see yourself in him? The way that he was a rookie with that confidence and you were a 15-year-old?
Yeah, but I didn't have the confidence, but because I got the confidence. Man, if this guy's doing it, man, that's the kind of confidence I want.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just that mentality of, I'm going to figure this thing out.
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to figure it out. Somehow, some way, we can figure it out.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Did you, when you spoke with him, did you have any, did you get to meet him or shake hands?
I did get to meet him, yeah. We spoke at different times. So I spoke on stage, I think the day before. He spoke the day after.
Yeah.
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 That was an incredible moment for sure.
I mean, look at the emotions you just felt for a man that you met for a minute or so personally, but the impact he's created from afar.
Yeah.
I think we often we overlook the impact we could create, and we think that we have to have direct connection. We need to be sitting down with this person, talk to them, being in their lives. But Kobe was not like that for millions of people. It was his values, his integrity, his tenacity, all these things. And this actually is just kind of hitting me with a download right now. It's like, it's very, very inspiring, and it's getting me inspired to think that he impacted you so much. He just created an emotional movement in you, as of many. But you've only had 1, 2, maybe whatever minutes of in-person interaction.
Yeah.
But
it's crazy how much impact he can put in the world. And that's why I love, when you share the gifts with your world and then you help others do the same. It's what drives me today. If I can share my gifts with the world, it's one of the ways you can make major impact in this world. And again, sometimes you got to dig deep though to find out what those gifts were. I mean, you see me speaking the way I'm speaking today, but 6 years ago I didn't speak this way.
Yeah.
I was very, very, I had a self-limiting belief that I wasn't very smart. So for many years I couldn't explain how I got to where I got. So everything you're hearing from me, I had to reverse engineer, right? And
let's talk about that. Let's talk about the 2016 onward when you...
Yeah, so that was the first time I got punched in my face, right?
That was the 2016?
That was 2016.
Okay.
I got punched in the face twice. I shared with you the 2020.
What was the 2016 one?
The 2016, which is why I became so obsessed with becoming a personal development that just happens to be a leadership development company, right? That just happens to be in smart home arena, in the solar arena, right? Is because I went through it. And in 2016, what happened to me is I finally surpassed my self-worth. I finally surpassed my identity. One of my mentors, Ed Milet, talks about the thermostat, right? Well, that's what I did, right? See, you're never going to out-earn your self-worth. I'm going to repeat that again. You're never going to out-earn your self-worth. You could have all the talent to make 7 figures a year, but if your self-worth is down here, you're never going to get it, right? You'll always self-sabotage yourself to come back down to what you really think you're worth, because your subconscious mind will always prove itself correct.
Yes.
So if your like me, if your self-limiting belief was that I wasn't very smart, it's going to prove itself, right? So what happened to me in 2016, all these thoughts, the self-limiting belief that I had came little by little, started to resurface. And that self-limiting belief was that I wasn't very smart because the school system made me believe that because I got a 1.8 GPA and because I didn't pass test, I wasn't smart. So for years I suppressed that by saying to myself, as long as I outwork everybody, as long as I have faith, discipline, perseverance, integrity, I'll beat people out. And that's what I did from 1999 to 2016.
Okay.
Until that moment came. And what happens is when it comes, you start going on a downward spiral. So I started to self-sabotage my family. I started to self-sabotage my business, self-sabotage my faith. All of a sudden, I went away from faith. And I'm going on a downward spiral, and I'm going fast. And I knew what the problem was. And the problem was that I hadn't studied, I hadn't worked on my mind. See, one of the reasons that I was successful from 20 to 40, or 21 to 40 years old, was because when I worked at the call center, before I would get on the phones to sell, they would pay me to train on my mind and personal development.
Really?
For an hour a day, 5 days a week, I had to work on my mindset. And then like a dummy, once I started my own company, sometimes you have a little too much freedom, so you lose a little bit of discipline. I stopped working on my mind.
What were you like learning in those hours? What were they teaching you?
There's a lot of mindset stuff, communication.
Was it being taught by like the legends of that time, or was it like more corporate training?
It was corporate training.
Corporate training.
Yeah. And self-mastery is self-awareness.
Yeah.
So a lot of personal development is you become aware of why you do things, and then you could break the habits.
Amen.
Well, when you don't do something for a long time, you start to dislike it. So for 20 years, I didn't work on my mind, so I started to dislike it. I didn't want to pick up a book whatsoever. So I finally picked up a book because I knew what the problem was. And my sales guys were all into Grant Cardone and 10X. So I'm like, man, I got to pick up this book. So I pick up a book. Of course, I can't read it. So I get the audio, can't retain it. So I literally had to hit play and stop, write 75% of the book out. That's the only way I could retain the information. Well, what I realized is that mostly everything that was in this book I had already experienced. What did I say earlier? You only believe something in your heart when you experience it.
Yes.
Well, when I read it in the book, I was like, wait a minute, everything he's talking about, I've already done. And then I started studying people like Ed Milet, who now has become one of my best friends. And I started realizing, wait a minute, everything he's talking about, I've also experienced.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening is my self-conscious mind started to rise up. See, in 2015, I went in front of the whole company. I said, we're going to be a $100 million company. Problem is my self-limiting belief didn't believe it. So my self-conscious started to prove itself right. So it started to basically attack it, right? But that's why I got the personal development. It allows you to associate with successful people, and when you take their experiences and you start to apply them, you can manifest who they are.
Yes.
So I said to myself, both of these guys are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're talking about stuff that I already did. So what happens? Your subconscious mind starts to rise up.
Wow.
And then it aligns with what you're saying in your conscious.
Yes.
Then what happens is God starts giving you all the divine connections. What happens in 2017? My wife books a show called Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, which then opens up the floodgates for me to go to recruit, because now it shows my success.
Yeah.
Now it shows the glamorous part of what we do. And I'm able to go all kinds, I'm able to recruit like crazy. C-level executive calls me that was running a $500 million company. He's now our president. Same year, Grant Cardone calls me. and says, hey, I want you to come out on my podcast.
Did he was it his team that found you, or did he see you on the show?
His team, I just came out on the show, so he wanted me to talk about, the show and how sales, I'd never even done a podcast before. I never spoke in front of that audience before. And then from there, I did so well that then Ed Milet DM'd me and said, hey, do you want to come out on my podcast?
Well, describe the Grant Cardone podcast here, because that was your first one.
Oh, yeah.
You wrote out his book to even try to retain it. Go a little more granular with how that experience was with him.
Yeah, so first of all, I slept 30 minutes that night. That's how scared I was.
Oh, my gosh.
Because, Grant's a guy where if you don't know what you're talking about, he'll shred you to pieces, and he'll say, you're not a power player. I've seen him do that. You're not a power player. What are you doing here? And literally, that was a vision I was running in my head. I'm like, wait a minute, what if he does this, right? So I get my confidence from preparation. Man, I prepared, I think, 10 hours for every 30 minutes minimum, right? That's where I have to prepare.
Yeah.
I prepare like crazy, and that gives me the confidence. I literally thought of every question he can ask.
Okay, so that was your type of preparation.
Yeah, that was I'm not a guy that can just wing stuff.
Of course, you're a sales guy. You have every objection, and you're putting the answer, so you just know.
I just needed to become prepared, and I did. Yeah. Here's the crazy part. I did not want to do it. In fact, I kept running away from it. And my one of the guys that I was working with before kept saying to me, hey, Grant wants you to come on the show. I was like, I made up the excuse of I'm busy, yeah. Right? And then finally I had this thing in my heart that kept telling myself, no, you have to do this, because one of the things I didn't tell you is at 15, well, I might have said it, at 15 years old, my mom would pray over me all the time. She said, one day you're going to be so successful that you're going to be sharing on how the reason you're successful, the number one reason, is because God has always been with you. That's why if your why is big enough, you're going to want to step into faith, because you realize you can't do it with him. And now that you have him, you're going to step into the uncertainty of something that demands more than you think you're worth, so that, step on something that demands more than you think you're worth so you can succeed at it, right? Well, the reason I did it was because my dream was to be able to tell people about how God was a big reason for my success. That's why I did it. If that dream wouldn't have been big enough, I would have never gone on it.
That was the only reason you went on Grant Cardone's.
Only reason I went on.
Because you had all the opportunities, they were waiting for you, and you kept pushing it aside, making the excuse of busy.
And here's the thing, because of that, and then Ed Milet's, is why you have me in front of you here, right? I would have, and now I get to share my story, and I get to impact, hopefully, a lot of people.
Oh, you will. You already are.
You'll never know what those gifts are until you go through the resistance.
Yes.
So all that resistance I had to go through now allowed me to unlock what I believe is one of my biggest gifts in life.
And you got to refine the craft. It's like you had the diamond, but it was all the dirt and mud around it. And you're I know every single person listening right now will agree with this, but I'm very, very impressed. I truly am. We're going to have a great time after playing basketball, all these things, but I'm very impressed with just your cadence, your storytelling, all these things. But that only comes from you practicing it on Grant Cardone's, and and it's funny to even say practicing it on some of the biggest podcasts in the world. Such a beautiful testimony of what you've done, but you wouldn't be probably either on this podcast or as good of a influential speaker if you didn't practice it through going through the resilience and the resistance.
It's another pain. I had to go through the pain of that, man. That was hard, man. I mean, the first one of my, I think it's the best podcast ever, Ed Milet's Unlocking Your Success Code. I mean, I spent a whole week literally writing that thing down word for word, going back, listening, going back, listening, going back, listen it. That's why, a lot, I probably remind some people of Ed Milet and Irwin, because they're both of my mentors, and I studied them, right? It's no different than when Kobe Bryant studied Michael Jordan, right? You study, you study, you study. And, but people don't see that kind of preparation. No. Because it was hard for me. It's, again, my gift isn't to just go up there and wing stuff and sound all eloquent. I got to prepare, man.
Which there's different speakers too. Sometimes I like preparing too, but I'm more of the put me out there and I'm going to let it flow. I do need some preparation, but it's not everyone's like that. You're the type of person, you need preparation. But the cool thing about you is you're so prepared, yet you're not calculated. You're calibrated, which is a slight difference. You're calibrated in the sense that you know what to say and you know your stories, but you're not calculated where you sound like a robot. And that's when people don't resonate or they tune out. And you have that flow. And I think it's because you also, and I'm sure you could agree, but you have the Holy Spirit within you.
Yeah.
You're open to whatever flows, so you're connected. It's not like it's only coming through your brain.
Right.
You're actually open, so it's actually coming through and then coming out through your heart.
Right.
And that's the difference.
So here's the way I'll break it down, which is,
Please.
I'm agreeing. But what I do though is I literally have to write a script so it is my thoughts, right? So I'll give you an example. I spoke last week in a presentation, right, in front of, I don't know, 2,000 people.
Wow.
And I'm like, what am I going to talk about? So I write it like a story, like a script, right? Because, if you're going to go up there, if you just have 30 minutes, you don't want to go over, right?
Yeah.
So, if I go up there, can I just go up there and talk about anything, but then I'll ramble on and it won't make sense, right?
Yes.
So what I'll do is I'll write it out, then I'll memorize the entire script. I'm not a good reader, so I can't use, what are those things called?
The teleprompter?
Teleprompter, I can't. Because
all-
even if I read it, I can't transfer it because I'm
Yeah.
in my head about reading it. So for me, again, different people learn a different way. I memorize something, then I internalize it,
Yeah.
and then I personalize it.
Yeah.
So that's why when people say, "Oh, I don't," and again, I'm timid, I'm shy, so this is why I got to do it this way. But I tell my sales guys all the time, they're like, because some of my best sales guys they're like, I don't want to follow a script.
Yeah.
And they sell on personality. Well, if you sell on personality, you're not going to be able to scale that thing because there's not
Amen
too
to
many
that.
people that have personalities, right? However, if you sell on a script and you never change what you're saying, then what happens is you're able to scale that because now somebody like me who couldn't complete sentences, who was very shy, can just learn it well enough that you won't even know it's a script,
Yes.
right? So like when I was up on stage, I was telling my sales guys last week, and this is just new, so I'm sharing it with you. My whole 30-minute presentation was scripted.
Yes.
No one in that audience knew it was
No one
scripted
knew.
because I knew it so well.
That's the power of
Yeah.
of real influential speaking.
Yep. And then I didn't have to think about it. It was reflexive. So if I
Yes.
want to do a little cut to the right, I can't. Boom, I'm back to my left.
Yeah.
If I want to go to the right, boom, go back to the center, right?
Yeah.
I could, and you know it so well that even if you get nervous, you practiced it so much, you can't get it wrong.
Yeah.
So even though your heart's going boom, 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 like you can't mess up because you know
was your
it
heart
so well.
like that when you went on that stage?
Always. I hate the first minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First minute when you have to try to build that trust and rapport, and you're like, are these people gonna boo me? Are they gonna, start seeing people walk out?
Well, you know what my fear is?
What's
I
that?
still, when I get really nervous, I'll start sweating. It doesn't happen as much as it used to, but it still happens. So my biggest fear is, man, I'm going to go up on stage. If I forget what I'm going to say, I'm going to start sweating. So that's the big thing. But so that's where that little bit of fear comes in. But that's why I prepare like crazy for these things. And again, when you prepare for it so much, even if you wanted to screw it up, you can't because you've done it so many times.
Do you think that's not to go too far on a tangent on this, because I want to keep this train of thought, and I love it, but the fear of messing up and then getting very like sweating a lot, is that because it's tied to your memories as a kid sweating? Like, do you think that's an actual physiological thing that's in your DNA, or do you think it's just because once you have that fear, that memory of you being very fearful and as a kid sweating profusely in the when you're 15 years old, do you think that's where it's connected to?
I think it's a little bit of that. I think that's why I still got to study on my mind all the time.
Yeah.
Right? Because that self-limiting belief will resurface itself. Right? So it's constant work.
Yeah.
It's not, oh, I made it. I don't got to work on my mind anymore because I'm so good and I articulate so well. No, I got to constantly work on that, because whenever I stop working on it, that little thing starts to resurface. Right? So it's constant work. Right? It's no different than working on your body. Right? You want to stay in shape. You got to continue to work on it, because it doesn't matter what you did the last 20 years or how ripped you've looked the last 20 years. You let yourself go, it'll go away.
Exactly. Do you believe, and this is just like a little more, just honestly, this is why we're so casual here, but do you believe that, like, and I'm sure you've done some different work and therapy and things like that, but do you believe that there's a chord that if you learned how to properly snip that from the physiological response of getting fearful and sweat a lot, do you think there's a way that if you release that, you became aware of it and did some therapy, that if you became fearful nowadays, that you probably wouldn't sweat that profusely?
Maybe. I'm sure there's probably stuff that could, I mean, I've heard people, talk about that, all these things that happen to you from a childhood, can be, you could fix those things. But like, I think I'm okay with it because it makes me better, I think, right? I think you got to have a little fear, right? It makes you prepare, right? Maybe if I didn't have the fear, I wouldn't prepare and I wouldn't be as good, right? But here's the other thing. Here's another thing. I mean, going, and I got this from Ed because I learned on one of his presentations, the last one that he did, he talked about the biggest gift that came out of seeing his dad being an alcoholic, right? I started to think, what is one of my biggest gifts? And one of my biggest gifts is I'm really good under pressure. When pressure comes, like the way it came in 2020, things just slow down for me. And the best version of myself comes out, right? And I just get it done. And I remember thinking to myself, why do I have this gift? And it made me go back to my childhood because I don't really like to go too much to my childhood. And I remember why.
Why is that?
When the cops would come in, kick the door down, guns drawn, put everybody on the floor, my mom would always scream for me, Edwin, are you okay? Edwin, are you okay? And I was calm. I wasn't crying because I wanted her to feel comfortable. I didn't want her to feel fearful. And I remember saying to myself, Mom, I'm okay. I'm okay. And I know. That's why when pressure comes, I'm that calm. So I also got a goodness out of it as well as I was a kid, and that's I think it's one of the best gifts I have is I'm really good under pressure, but it's because I've been under pressure so many times. Again, like we said earlier, only difference between average and elite is elite can take more pressure. Elite can take more pain. It's the only difference. When pain comes, most people run away instead of standing in it. Again, courage in adversity, fortitude.
What would you provide for a tactical or strategic way for someone that doesn't have, and I'm sure they could find a story in their life where they've found how to handle pressure, as we all have to do some searching on that. But right now, someone that's like, well, Edwin, freaking amazing. I don't know if I can handle pressure like you, but I want to.
Yeah.
What would be some ways that you could strategically teach
Amazing question. You're a great interviewer, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
That.
So, great question. You get wins under your belt. If you've never kept the promises you made to yourself, you probably can't handle pressure. Confidence comes from keeping the promises you make to yourself. So what happens is get some small wins. Now, going forward, always keep the promises you make to yourself. Because a lot of times, that's integrity, right? And people always, they keep the promises they make to other people, but they don't keep the promises they make to themselves.
Isn't that crazy?
So what happens is you think no one's watching, but your subconscious mind is just taking little checks. Oh, did it again, didn't come through on his word. Oh, once again, he said he's going to be the top sales guy in the world, but he just quit. Said he did this, right? So it doesn't believe you, but what happens is when you start getting win after win after win, just keeping your promises, your subconscious mind starts to rise up. And then when it aligns with what you're saying, then then things start happening for you, right? So once you get to that point and you get some wins under your belt and you have confidence, then for me, again, I don't like to give advice, I give my experiences.
Yeah.
Then you figure out a way to leverage the most amount of pressure on you so that you can perform at your highest level. See, low stress gives you low performance. But if you leverage a certain amount of pressure on you, it'll increase your urgency level. It'll increase your necessity level. And that urgency is what makes you make it happen because it untaps a part of your mind, a part of your body that you normally don't have access to. So that's the beauty about leveraging the most pressure on you so that you can perform at the highest level. But prior to that, you got to keep the promises you make to yourself. You try to go straight to that, you can get freaking
So
punched.
small wins.
Wins.
What could that be for someone that's a solopreneur or
It
entrepreneur?
could be as easy as telling your friend you're going to go out with them to lunch, and even though you don't feel like it that day, you don't make up an excuse. You don't lie. Because just that little lie, oh, you know what, I feel sick. No, you don't feel sick. You just don't feel great because, you know, you woke up not feeling your best. You're not coming through on your promise, right? So no matter how big, no matter how small, you keep the promise no matter what. And sometimes you're going to make promises that you can hit, but you quit too early. Like, I remember just being when I first started the company, I would give myself a goal of 8 to 10 a week. And if I didn't get 10, I didn't care if I had to work on Sunday, I would get 10. Minimum 8. It was actually 8. But no way in hell was I not going to get 8 sales in a week. Like, if I had to work more hours, I would. But I was going to make it happen. And what ended up happening is every time I did it, my belief level started to, go. But eventually what will happen is you'll surpass what you think you're worth, like it happened to me in 2016. And then you just got to attack that worry. We all know what the worry is.
Yeah.
We all know what the self-limiting belief is, but we run away from it versus attacking it. See, you eliminate worry by taking action towards it. But most people procrastinate because they don't want to go through the pain.
Dude,
Now, full circle, life and pain are inseparable.
You're like your own walking Think and Grow Rich book and multiple other books all in between. Holy crap.
Yeah.
So bringing it back to 2016, that just to kind of wrap it up on that story arc is, so that was your first punch in the face. That's when you started to self-sabotage. You realized that, finance, faith, your family, everything you're going under because you surpassed the amount of money you thought you were worth. Like, business was going great.
Business was going great.
Outside people were looking at you like, this guy's living an amazing life.
I was hiring smarter people than I was, and I kept thinking to myself, man, they're going to find out I'm really not that smart, man. They're going to find out I just got lucky this entire time. These self-limiting BS things that your mind sometimes tries to mess with you with, and I had to, again, fight the resistance and take action towards it.
So the pivot in that, because I know shortly after was the Housewives. That's when it started to open up the gates.
Yeah.
And then that's when you got into Grant Cardone. Then shortly after, Ed Milet saw that. Were you friends with Ed before, or
no?
You became best friends?
I became really good friends. One of my best friends, like I said, because I came on the show, and then we just hit it off. And then from there, Teddy and his wife hit it off. And, and then we just been keeping a close eye on each other, and we'll go to trips together, and we have a good time.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So 2017 came.
So here's something important for people to learn too. When I hang out with Ed, like, I don't really ask him for advice because, like, people like him, they're working all the time, right? We want to have fun.
Yes.
If I want an answer, I just got to study the guy. He's got endless content. So when I need advice from Ed, I go on his content. I sign up, I'm part of his masterclass, Arte, so that when we get to hang,
As friends.
As friends.
Which people like him and you too
Yeah.
need just a general friend that they're not going to have a mentor-client relationship.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, that's why when I say personal development allows you to associate with people, like, you don't have to, like, some of you might be saying, well, I can't get close to Ed. Well, yeah, you can. Study all his stuff.
And you got to find a way to give value.
And then if you study all the stuff, he's answered every question just the way that I hope I've answered, most of your questions today.
So many of them.
Yeah.
Quick story to add into that. I resonate so much, and I love how, even with the Kobe thing, you said, I'd rather be a friend than a fan.
Yeah.
I've lived my life ever since I went to my first Tony Robbins event. That's what changed my life, both mentally but also business-wise. I was sitting in the general admission way at the top, and by the grace of God, my business partner got a front row ticket when she was there because she asked the right question, how do I get down there? She got me one. Completely changed my life. And I remember being in the front rows all around these people, and Tony, then I was just like blown away. I didn't know really who the guy was before the event, and I was like, this is everything that I want to do and more in my own unique way. But I remember every time I see these people flooding up, coming from the back, people in the front trying to take photos. And my mindset, I'm so grateful it was at the time, is I don't want to be looked at as a fan, because learning the nervous system and everything from Tony, I was like, the moment I go up and want to take a photo in his nervous system, it's going to set off like, here's another fan. So he's going to connect that with my face. I was like, I'm not going to ever take a photo with him until I'm a business partner with him, I'm speaking on a stage, or for some God-given reason, I'm going to earn it. And so I've been to multiple events, and I would make the eye contact and make my presence, and there was a lot of beautiful ways, but I would never go up there. And then one day, it was 2020, it was after his birthday, which was the leap year, February 29th, his 60th birthday. That was the big event. Anyone was invited to that. I was like, cool, like, there was no connection there. But I was invited to a private gala that was the day after in Malibu, only like around 100 people. It was for a charity. Siri and Becca Lindley, amazing people for ending horse slaughtering and all these just atrocious things. I was invited to this private gala, and Tony was there, and he was, one of the people that was going to be there. And even in that moment, and I share this because I resonate so much with your story, even in that moment, I was like, is this it? Like, did I earn the right here? And I just looked around at the quality of the people, and it was so exclusive, and no one could just get into this. I was like, this was my moment. I earned it. So I went up to him, and I put this video on my social media. But this was a couple months after I stood up in front of 15,000 people. I was going to say I was going to speak on stages, and I had no clue I was going to do that. I went up and talked to him, gave him love, and I said, hey, I was the guy a couple months ago here. And he like pointed, he's like, oh yeah, I remember you. But that was the beautiful moment where I realized that, the delayed gratification of people wanting to go get a photo, be a fan. You're hanging out with Ed, and obviously you guys are best friends now, but you could have maybe, that relationship couldn't have been as deep if you were trying to like get mentorship from him or asking all these questions, and now you kind of set that different energy. I just really acknowledge that because there's so many people that need to hear that the emotional intelligence, if you want to rise up quick, whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, it doesn't matter. It's having an emotional intelligence how you did, where you just learn about yourself, you learn about that person, and you understand what they really want. And Ed didn't want a guy to be around him that was cool, but all he was getting pestered by is more questions that now makes him feel like he can never take time off.
Right, exactly.
And you had that higher level thinking, and now here you guys are today just doing incredible things and talking business in between, but that wasn't the main thing on why you guys connected.
I mean, especially now with social media, you can, I get it 20 years ago, people don't have access to it, but now people have access all the time. And what I could tell you about, people that have done very well for themselves, though, you'll get the respect if you know their story.
Yeah.
But like if you don't take the time to really study them, like they're gonna be like, how many times I get hit up on social media of like, hey, I can build you up by 100,000 more followers, blah blah blah. First thing I check up, they don't follow me. Second thing I check, they don't even know my story. Yeah. Right. So if they don't know if they don't take the time to go through your story, they don't care. Yeah. You're just another number that they're trying to set off, and people want to feel exclusive, right? Yes. People want to feel like, hey, I took the time to study this person, and then you could say to them, hey, when you said this really meant the world to me, right? Yes. Or whatever. But now they're going to know, like, wait a minute, this guy actually took the time to learn my story. I'm going to answer his question.
And that's a pro tip in sales for people doing sales through or connection through Instagram is, if you're going to go promote a product or anything or build a connection, go follow them. It doesn't mean you have to follow them for weeks. Go follow them, like a couple photos. I say like at least three photos, leave genuine comment. I mean, not like 3 photos, like 3 photos and leave 3 genuine comments. Genuine, not like, oh, this is cool.
It's gotta be something that they know that is real about them.
It is real.
Right? That's something that they believe. Right?
And I scroll down a couple and I see something that's like, oh, that's actually really cool. This guy met Tony Robbins, or this guy was speaking on this event, or whoever it is. And then when I when I finally message them, it's all those things that you've noticed. They're following me. They actually genuine comment. They actually see something that's not just on my bio. Just a little sales tip that I know a lot of people listening are doing this on Instagram, and that's the last thing you would not want to do if you were reaching out to someone like Edwin.
At the end of the day, just people want to be seen, right? They want to know that you care, right? Yeah. And I think if you could show people that you see them, they'll automatically grow an affinity towards you, right? Yes. So I think one of the most things that the most important things you could give people is your presence and your time. Because most people are going through pain. Remember, life and pain are inseparable. And when you're going through pain is when you feel like you're alone and like you don't matter. So if someone can pay attention to you, it'll mean the world to them. I remember when I was at this call center, I wanted the president to know my name so bad, and I wanted the CEO to know my name. I was breaking every record in the company. They never knew my name. They'd pass me by. They would never even acknowledge me. I said, if I ever build a company, I'm going to make sure I acknowledge everyone. I'm going to see them. Because I know what it feels like not to be seen. Wow. So that's why it's so important for me to treat people the way I want to be treated.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your faith.
Yeah.
I don't even have to ask the question of how important it is. I already know it's a game changer. The question I want to ask is, what moment comes to mind when your faith has been most tested? And just elaborate and share what happened in that and what you had to do when it was most tested.
Well, I think definitely when my daughter was born, because I knew that I had to change my lifestyle. And my daughter was born, Isabella. I had just broken up with her mom, and a month after I found out that she was pregnant. And there's really no way we were going to go back. And I knew that I just had to stop this trend of women and different women, because I knew that my daughter couldn't just meet random women all the time, because I didn't want my daughter to eventually end up with somebody like me at the time. See, with me, I got my self-worth from women because at 16, 17, I started noticing that when women were around me, more people wanted to be around me. Again, I wanted to be seen, right? And
Wow.
So I got a lot of my self-worth came from women, right? Managers started to know my name. People I looked up to started to know my name just because of the women I was hanging out with. So then I told that lie to myself that I needed women. So when my daughter was born, I knew that I needed to change. And I was addicted to that feeling of women, right? And not to the sexual part of it, but just having different women, almost like a conquest, right? And I knew that I couldn't beat it by myself. I knew that I needed God in my mind, and I didn't want to end up, I wanted to finally break that stronghold that my family had. My dad wasn't really around. Obviously, he went to jail, but he was also a womanizer.
Yeah.
And he's good with me talking about this stuff because I've already talked to him that I said, one day we might have to talk about it, because it's how we change people's lives, right?
Yeah.
And I knew that, how much I missed them, and I didn't want my kids having to go through that. And yeah, my faith is there's no way I would have been able to do that by myself.
Yeah.
And by the way, it wasn't overnight.
Yeah.
It took a while.
How would you describe your faith before that moment when your daughter was born? Were you and you were going through with, the like you mentioned with, you had a polling for women and such, did you still see yourself connected to God? Did you know that you were a quote unquote, did you think
I was
you were
getting
like a
closer,
sinner?
so I was getting closer to my faith, I knew from a very young age that God was the way. And finally, ultimately, you have so much, I started having success, not just in my business, but in my personal life. I was hanging out in all the cool spots. I was hanging out with all the people that most people would think were cool. Damn, you're hanging out with those people?
Yeah.
You're hanging out in those circles? And, especially in Hollywood Hills, in Hollywood, I started hanging out in those circles where the most beautiful women you could ever think of, and just some beautiful homes, just what you think you want. And the higher and higher I got up there, the more emptier and emptier I felt. And I'm I remember finally hitting that moment where I'm oh, I made it, man. I'm like hanging out with all the people I always wanted to hang out with. There's just women here left and right. Like, it's on. Because once you're in that clique, then all the women like you, because if you're part of that clique, you must be someone, right? And I just remember saying to myself, is this it? Like, this is it? I've never felt lonelier. I've never felt more empty. And that's when I knew, that I'm missing God. That thing that I keep looking for, that's going to give me, that's going to fulfill that emptiness. I mean, I already had it. I had the money. I had, again, the everything I thought I always wanted. I felt empty. And I was like, the only thing I haven't really given a shot is faith.
What did you do to get back on track?
I started going to church.
And
again, it was a process. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. Like, I fell, did it again.
Did you feel shame right away? Like, when you went back to church and thinking you're a fraud, or people are going to judge you, or?
I did, and it's funny because when you fall, the adversary tries to tell you to run away. Like, oh, don't go to church, right? But that's when you need to go to church the most. But the adversary's like, don't go. You're a hypocrite. Blah 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 blah. And I just knew. In fact, when I first married Teddy, I told her straight out. I said, hey, if you want this to work, you got to make sure I go to work. I go to church every Sunday. Otherwise, it's not going to work out. I literally told her that.
That's beautiful, man. You hit an emotional string on me. Of just that line when you said, when you fall, the adversary wants you to run away instead of to go and push through or get back up. And I really felt, for me personally, I felt that, but I really felt when you said that, I know that hit a lot of heartstrings for people listening. That's I think why it really hit me, because that was, out of all this, that really, I think was probably the deepest thing you've said. There's a lot of things. You've been married for Teddy with Teddy since 2009?
2009, yeah.
2009. Incredible.
Well, no, actually, we started dating in 2009. We got married July 4th of 2011. So,
if you could, I mean, your story, the way you guys met, obviously not the ideal or typical of what people would think for both two amazing humans. I'd love for you to share that, but I'll save the question for after. Share that story. I think that's just for someone to understand that it's not always perfect sunshine and rainbows finding.
Oh, right. I mean, that's the last person when I met Teddy, it was the last person I thought I was going to meet, that I was going to end up marrying that day, because 3 weeks prior, my daughter was born. So the last thing I was looking for was like to get hooked up right away with somebody. My buddy's from Vegas, so he calls me like, hey, let's go out December 26th. I still remember the date because it was the day after Christmas. I remember telling him, who goes out the day after Christmas, dude? He's like, come on, let's go out. I'm here in LA. So we go to this club, Coco de Ville, and as you can imagine, it was a slow night. It's just 12 o'clock, and I'm like, all right, let's go home. There's nothing here. Let's go home. And then I obviously set Teddy coming in, and she doesn't pay attention to me because she's kind of,
She with a group of girls, or she came solo?
Group with the girls, yeah. And I just literally went back. She passed me up, went back. I searched her out. I found her. And then her friends wouldn't leave her alone. Like, she was always with her friends. And then her friends left her for maybe a minute. And I just kind of went up to her.
You were a Hawkeye and just waited.
I went up to her and I said, hey, blah, blah, blah. I forgot what I told her, but I just remember saying, you want a drink? She said, sure. And then I took her to the bar away from her friends. And then, next thing you know, club's ending. I'm putting her in, away, and then she just pulls me in, and next thing we know, we wake up the next morning. She doesn't remember my name. She calls me Edward, I think, and I don't really. I call her Terry. To this day, we call ourselves sometimes Terry and Ed and Eddie or whatever. Edward, I should say, and yeah, it was what was supposed to be,
when did it? Because there was a little bit of turbulence after that, but when did you know that, holy crap, this is serious, or I want to marry this woman?
I mean, I knew that she was the one.
Yeah.
I knew that she was the one from the minute I saw the way she held Isabella and the way she cared for Isabella.
When did she see Isabella? That night
No, she met Isabella basically I don't know, it's a funny story. She met her 3 weeks after, I believe. And I remember that, when she first came back to my house that same day, because she gave me a ride home, I didn't tell her I had a daughter because I didn't want to tell her, I
Yeah.
had a daughter that's 3 weeks old. She was
Yeah,
like, you
it really
creep.
what?
So
Yeah.
she comes to my house and she's in my house and she goes, is that a ultrasound picture? Do you have a kid? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, well, how old's your kid? I'm like, I was so scared. I'm like, 6 months. First thing that came out of my mind, 6 months, right? She's like, oh. Well, she meets her later and she's like, 3 weeks later, she's like, this does not look like a 6-month-old kid. So, yeah.
But the way you saw her hold Isabella and just saw that she
Yeah,
was just...
and she just cared for her so much. And she's just, I mean, just a blessing.
What was different about her comparatively to any other woman? And I think this is so important too, because there are men and vice versa, women with men and men with women, but like there are men that are going to be transformed from this message and to understand maybe they're not as, suave as you or attractive, but we all have our same tendencies and wanting to hunt and to win and achieve. And for you, I believe you're driven by uncertainty. Your whole life is uncertain. You handle under pressure.
Wow, you freaking nailed that in the head. See, I had to literally think about this, but yeah, part of it was the women because they gave me the self-worth, but part of the problem is I love the uncertainty of not knowing how the night was going to end.
Which is also like variety. So uncertain variety is the same human need. Tony Robbins.
I love that uncertainty of like not knowing how the freaking night was going to end and all that. So a lot of that had to do with that. But yeah, just how much she cared. I'm big on heart. Like, she's beautiful from the outside. Like, I get that. But there's a lot of beautiful women out there, right? And there's always going to be a more attractive man. There's always going to be a more attractive woman. And at the end of the day, you realize that what matters is the heart, the love. And I knew she'd be a perfect mom. I wanted a perfect mom. Nobody's perfect. Let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
I knew she'd be a great mom.
She's perfect in your eyes.
Yeah, in my eyes, right? And I knew that I could get old with her.
Yeah.
Because eventually, again, very attractive, but eventually we all get old.
Yeah.
So those looks go away. And if the person's heart's not there, and she just, she was different. I remember when so you just reminded me of something. Obviously when she first held Isabella, but when I was really knew she was the one, was I took her to the hood, to where I grew up, and my friend of mine was having a party, and it was out in Huntington Park, and she's John Mellencamp's daughter, right?
Yeah.
She's
Jack and Diane.
Yeah, Jack and Diane.
Yeah.
She's used to living a certain type of lifestyle, and I remember taking her there. Never once complained. Had a great time. Treated everyone with so much respect. She could have easily thought she was better than them, and that's when I knew. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
That's hard to find.
Wow.
Someone that has that much humility to not. Because I've been around people that are very successful and they think they're too good.
Yeah.
And they don't treat people with respect. And we're all brothers and sisters. We gotta, no matter what color, no matter where you grew up, you treat people the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
Right? And we have a gift to be able to speak life to people, especially the more successful you are.
Yes.
And imagine if you're mean to someone that maybe isn't as successful as you are. Now that person thinks, I don't want to be successful. Is that what success is? Is that what a follower of Christ is?
Yes.
No.
And I was going to tie that back to, and I'm sure there's other people too in your life, but the person that changed your life, one of the biggest catalysts was the car sales guy. Mm-hmm. He was a person that I don't know if you connected with him or not much, but you saw him.
He ended up being my brother-in-law. So
Brother-in-law.
To this day, he's always had a.
So imagine if he was a slimy, sleazy car salesman that you were like, I would not want to be like that. You could have been in an entire different trajectory because you didn't know probably anyone else at that time that was making that type of money.
Yeah.
Well, when people
and he would also help because we didn't have any food. So he'd be like, hey, Edwin, here's some $20.
So you saw that.
I saw that.
So
I saw how you could give back to people, and little something here, little something there, changes your life.
And it did change your life.
Yeah, I was able to buy some. I remember my sister, because she'd work. My older sister, she's like a mom to me too.
Yeah.
Because at that point she didn't live with us; she lived with him, and they had their own thing going, so they couldn't take. They tried to help as much as possible. But I remember, man, kids would make fun of my shoes. I had Stadias, which were like wannabe Adidas and stuff, and Pro Wings. My mom would shop at Pro Wings all the time. And man, I just wanted some Jordans.
Yeah.
And I remember that first Jordan shoe I got, I was like, wow. And he gave it to me. So, he was a big influence. My dad was a big influence.
Yeah.
Even though, he did some things that he probably wasn't supposed to do. Man, he always cared about people. He always made sure that people felt at ease.
Yes.
And always took care of everyone. Like, he took care of his friends. He gave me the biggest lesson in life to this day. He said, no matter what, you always take care of your mom. You only have one mom. Doesn't matter what she does, doesn't matter how mad you get at her, always take care of your mom. And so if you see the way I am with mom on social media, I visit her every Saturday. We have breakfast, make time for her. It's because of my dad.
You had one of the biggest moments with her recently in Cancun, didn't you?
Yeah, it was it's one of my greatest moments in my life, because my story basically came full circle in regards to the promise I made to my dad. We took, prior to him going to jail, we took a family picture. And that family picture was the only picture we ever took, really, as a family. And then my brother was born while he was in jail. So we never took another family picture again, because we were never together again all at the same time. Wow. So 3 weeks ago, I took him to the Rosewood Mayakoba which is an hour away from Cancun. Mm-hmm. So if you don't know what the Rosewood is, there's the Ritz and then there's the Rosewood, right?
Is it really? It's above the Ritz.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Michael Jordan's hanging out there for a month right now. Wow. It's just another level, right? And I took my niece, all her kids. I took my sister, all her kids. I took my brother, all his kids. I took us, my immediate family now. I took my mom, I took my dad, and it was all his lineage there. And I didn't realize it at the time, but we took this picture, and it was the first time that we had ever, in 45 years, that we all took a picture together, the siblings, mom and dad. And then the other picture we took is obviously his lineage. And I just remember saying to him, Dad, I hope I made you proud. And he just starts bawling. I start bawling. That's what it's about. That's why you want to embrace the pain. It allows you to do stuff like that, where you can make a major difference in people's life.
Man.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Isn't it wonderful just when you see the story arcs like that come around? Yeah. Were you planning to have that photo, or is when you saw the photo, it
when I saw the photo, it connected. I was like, wait a minute, this is the first time in 45 years we're all there. Because either my older sister was missing, my mom wasn't there, my dad wasn't there, but, it was a special, special moment. Again, part of my dream was when my dad got out of jail, he'd never have to work a day in his life, so that he wouldn't have to go back into the life that caused him to be in jail for such a long time. So been taking care of him for a long time now. In fact, every World Cup, the reason that trip came out is we go to every World Cup. I take him because he's a big soccer fan. And part of that was because he was finally going to go to the World Cup for the first time. Since he was a kid, he wanted to go to the World Cup. So he's going to go to the World Cup in the United States in 1994. Gets popped, doesn't get to go to the World Cup.
Oh, wow.
So in 2014, I was like, Dad, your dream was always as a kid to go to the World Cup. I'm going to take you to Brazil. And then from Brazil, we went to Russia. We were supposed to go to Qatar, but then Colombia didn't make the World Cup. So I said, Dad, there's no point of going. Colombia's not in the World Cup. I said, why don't we just take another trip? And this was his surprise.
Wow. That 2014 World Cup, when it was the first time he's ever been since he's won.
Oh, and Colombia did so well in that World Cup. Him and I were just like,
how was that for him?
Amazing.
What did you see that was different? Because that's obviously, it was a childhood dream that maybe he suppressed, or.
Yeah. I mean, I'll send you some pictures so you could show it. I mean,
you just see him glowing.
Glowing, getting interviewed, all Columbia'd out. It was such a great moment, man. It's if you live for yourself, you can settle for less, but if you live for others, it'll require all of who you are. I got that from Erwin.
Say that one more time.
If you live for yourself, you can settle for less, but if you live for others, it'll require all of who you are.
I could see that. It's one thing also too, and it matches that quote, to accomplish your own childhood dreams.
Yeah.
But for our parents, who, let's be real, like most of our parents listening, my parents, there was no personal development. They had no clue what this stuff is. A lot of suppression in their dreams.
100%.
For you to help your dad do that, all it makes me think of is like, I want to do the same things with my dad. He's 37 plus years in Costco. He's the top manager, but I hate to say it, but he's working until he's going to die, because that's his entire identity. That's his thermostat. So one of the things is I want to not only provide the financial freedom so he doesn't have to even think about it, but that's not enough because I know the identity is there. But one of his childhood dreams and his passions is artistry. And, I haven't really thought of this until you just said this, truthfully. And I would love to find a unique way where he could experience art and like he's never done before, just like how you got your dad the World Cup.
Yeah.
And I could only imagine the way he lights up.
It's the best feeling in the world, for sure. Yeah.
It's beautiful, man. That's so beautiful.
As you're going through the pain, think of that why, right?
Yeah.
It's because you're
Oh, you're good. You're good. We'll just keep this in. This is casual. We'll cut it out. We'll keep it in.
Thanks, Ted.
You're good.
Oh, Ted's just walking in here.
This is the amazing Teddy that we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Are you about to get a massage?
Yes.
Oh, rock it. See, this is peak performance lifestyle. Midday, masseuse is walking in, got the table, take care of your body.
Exactly.
Robin Sharma says, are you familiar with Robin Sharma?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Twice a week massages.
I need to get better at that. She loves them, but so as you're going through the pain, you got to stop and remember the dream.
Yeah.
Right? Because what happens is if you don't stop to remember the dream constantly, you won't want to go through that pain.
Yeah.
But that was
It's like the light at the end of the tunnel.
light
It's
at
like
the
the
end.
North Star. You got to know where you're going.
Yeah. There's so many times I wanted to quit when I first started knocking doors. I mean, I became successful not because I was a great salesperson. I just knocked on so many freaking doors.
Yeah.
I was not going to go home until I got a sale. I can't tell you how many deals I got at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. Wow. And every time I did it, my confidence went up.
Yes.
Right? And the reason I did it was because I promised my mom I was going to buy her house. I said, Mom, in 90 days, I'm going to buy you a house. And I knew the kind of money I needed to make. I needed to make $1,200. I needed to make $3,000 a week for 12 weeks. And if I did $3,000 a week for 12 weeks, I'd be able to buy her that house. So even though I wanted to quit, I remember every time I wanted to quit, I would vision her coming home sweaty because she used to clean offices, and that Nissan Sentra that I told you about had no air conditioning. She'd be drenched in sweat herself, walking. We lived in a second-story apartment, so she'd have to walk these buckets of just cleaning tools. And I remember running all the time to help her. I was like, man, I'm gonna buy her a house. There's no way. She worked too damn hard. The other memory I would get from her was her crying, all the time after our home would get raided. Because the next day the house was a mess. I mean, everything's just turned upside down. And just seeing the pain of like, what are we gonna do? How am I gonna get my family through? Especially when my dad went to jail for a long time, there was a lot of times I'd see her crying and that pain that she went through, I'm like, no, I'm gonna make it happen. That's why you gotta go back to your why.
Yeah.
It goes back to the people you love.
People
that love will cast out all fears. That's a Bible verse too.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
People overlook that, man. They think that the why is just some sort of woo-woo facade, it's emotional, it's not for me. It's like, no, you're a very strategic man. You're very calculated, analytical. But that was the thing that pulled you when you were doing maybe 1,000 or so a week, and you're like, I need 3,000, not because of vanity reasons, because my mom. I
promised my mom I was going to go to that house. And then at the same time, when I did it, it just built this confidence in me. Like, oh shoot, if I keep knocking, because the reason people won't buy from you is because you look desperate. You're like, oh man, but because you've done it over and over and over.
Yeah.
That's why, like, in my world, I'd rather get one sale at the end of the night after you've gotten your ass kicked all day than getting 5 sales in a day when everything went your way.
Yes.
Because it's when everything doesn't go your way and you still have the grit, the fortitude, the resiliency to just get up one more time and get it done.
Yeah.
That's the confidence builder. So when it was 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, I didn't have a sale, you could not see this face desperate, because I knew it was just a matter of time.
Yes.
Why? Because I'd done it over and over and over again. Back to only difference between average and elite, the elite can take more pressure. The elite can take more pain. Life and pain, inseparable.
If you're listening, you are listening right now, the biggest thing that I hear from people is the tests and the struggles they're going through. They don't realize how that stuff pays off in the long run. So if you're going through like a test, a struggle, like you're going through the pain, the pressure, whatever it is, realize that this man is here today sharing this because your greatest test, if you decide and choose it to be, will be your greatest testimonies.
Amen to
and
that. You're
relating with these people, and too many times people get so, and it's okay, that's how the brain works, but they get so in the moment, they only are in like, how do I get out of this situation, which is survival. But if you could just step out of that, you will still have the struggle, but realize, you know what, it's always a reframe. It's like, you know what, this is the worst time of my life. I am going through a divorce. I am going through, my kids don't even want to talk to me, or whatever it is. And you could realize that and be aware of it. Don't push it away. But be like, you know what, who can I help with this when I get through this? What does this look like? I don't know what it's going to look like. Is it a podcast? Is it on stage? It doesn't matter. But realize that every test, your test, all these things, people are resonating so much because you went through those tests.
Yeah.
And you saw the North Star that kept you forward, and maybe you weren't at that time consciously thinking that, I'm going to teach this one day, because you didn't really realize that's 2017 or around that time. But like, if you can listen to this right now and start to have that mindset, you have a competitive edge. You have the strategic edge.
100%.
Because you're going to be able to teach that.
I'm glad you brought that up, because it's the one thing I forgot when I said when you're building that skill set of grit, fortitude, and resiliency. The other thing that happens, and why you want to cultivate, why you want to seek hard things, and why you want to seek and embrace the pain, is because you're also building a story that is going to inspire the masses. See, whatever pain you're going through, know that one day when you conquer it, it's going to be the story that changes many, many lives.
Do you think we would talk about Jesus if he just, died a peaceful death?
Nope.
Not as much as him being crucified in the most excruciating way that was in history.
100%.
He went through the ultimate pain, the ultimate sacrifice. That's exactly what that connected the dots too. It's like he proved that he could go through the worst, deal with the worst, experience the worst, and for whatever you believe or whatnot, but still has proven to raise back from the dead and to give hope. But if it was just a peaceful death, or he, just like died in his sleep or whatnot, like, it wouldn't show us that, well, it could have been worse. But it's the same thing for leaders. If you were raised by a single mom, you are 40 years old and you don't even know what you're doing yet. And I see that all the time. You're 40, 50 years old and you're like, well, it's too late for me. I could say it's too early for me, right? I'm too young. Then one day overnight, you'll say I'm too old, right? But if you're 50 years old and you want to get started, use that past 50 plus years as your story. Say, you know what? I'm here to prove that it doesn't matter if you just started, with 2 years of experience. I could do it now because I have this wisdom. I've been in this corporate job. I've done these 5 different, solopreneur jobs and all these things. And I'm here today to now teach you guys how to do this. That's the story. That's
the story. And to your point is if you continue to improve in life, which is growth, which gives you the fulfillment, then you stay young at heart. You start getting old at heart when you stop improving.
Yes.
But if you continue to improve, you're going to feel young at heart. Like, and again, I seek hard things. Like now, I want to be, like in my fitness, I want to be in the best shape of my life. I want to kick the 21-year-olds.
If you haven't seen this guy yet, he is definitely in shape. Like, but it's a choice.
It's a choice. And, at 20s, there's more vanity reasons. Now it's because my body's a big part of my effectiveness, right?
Yes.
I'm a better person if I work out. It just so happens that obviously when you work out, it shows it. But at first it was for vain reasons. Now it's more for the mindset, right?
Yeah.
But I'm constantly trying to challenge myself. Like, I want to get better. I want to be better than when I was 21. I want to get better than when I was 30. I want to get better than when I was 45. It's always competing against yourself. And when you compete, competition, if you embrace it, is actually a good thing because it gets you past your own capacity. That's why when you understand what competition really means, it makes you more, it makes you better, and it just makes the best version of yourself. My best sales guys are the most competitive. I'm, even though I'm kind of low key, I'm very competitive, man. I want to win.
Yeah.
And the good thing about competition too is when you compete, you get you to win. You can't win in life if you don't compete. Well, when you win, it starts becoming a habit.
Yes.
And now you just get used to winning.
And when you lose, you take that, don't think you're a failure, learn from it. Because even the most successful people, like, you're in the Hall of Fame for baseball if you strike out 7 out of 10 times.
100%, yeah.
Like, you are still getting in the Hall of Fame if you're hitting around a .3 something, like maybe a .4, but you're striking out still 6 times. Shooting, basketball, you miss 6 of your 10 shots, you're still a great shooter, especially from the 3-point range. Like, losing is also part of it.
Yeah. I'm here not because I haven't fallen, not because I haven't failed, not because I haven't lost. I'm here because I just got up one more time than I fell.
I love it. That's so
but
good,
the righteous
brother.
will fall 7 times,
I feel like
they
your
will
friend,
rise again.
Ed or someone, maybe might be talking about this thing called one more, power of one more.
Power of one more.
Yeah,
Get up one
maybe.
more
It
time.
might just be a worldwide, #1 book.
It's why I love his stuff so much, because out of the nothing, you create everything. It was the one more door knock.
Yes.
I could have sat on the curve. I was like, I'm going to get my mom's house. One more door. Bam. That's where everything was created. That's where the confidence was created.
Isn't that tie into your Lamborghini story? With the
Lamborghini story,
that?
same thing. Yeah, I'd love to share it. So this is back, my first Lamborghini that I got was back in 2008. The reason this is a special story for me is because it's the first time that I'd ever told myself that isn't for you. It's the only time I've ever given up on a dream. And in 2004, I gave up on that dream. I was doing pretty well for myself. I had a Porsche twin turbo. I had a Range Rover. It was pretty nice. And I told myself, you don't need a Lambo. That's for people that are doing way better than you are. And so I went away from it. Finally, in 2006, real estate was booming, and all these young kids were driving Lamborghinis. And again, I'm very competitive. And I think at the time I must have been, 27, 28? No, I was 30. And I see all these kids that are like 23, 22 driving Lambos. I'm like, wait a minute, did I just get passed up? And I thought to myself, wait a minute, that Lambo is what I've always wanted. Why did I say I couldn't get it? So I went to the dealership. I took action before I had what I needed. I go to the Lambo dealership and I realize the car is worth 300 grand. So then I ask questions about how to finance it. They're like, we have a 12-year plan, a 5-year plan. And what I realized if I would have financed it, that car would have cost me $550,000 because it was like a 7% interest rate.
Oh my gosh.
And I said to myself, there's no way I'm going to pay that much money. That's like a house. So if I buy this house, I'm going to buy it cash. And then to make me feel better about myself, I said, okay, if I'm going to buy it, I'm going to buy it using a different sort of income than the one I have today. So that's how, at this point, I had stopped knocking on doors because I already had teams and they were knocking and I was more in the office doing the training. So I decided to work from 6 to 10. So I'd work from 8 a.m. to 5:30. 5:30, our office is in Downey, so I'd drive at 6 o'clock, Watts, Compton, all those areas where there's a lot of crime. And I knocked for 4 hours. And I gave myself a 2-year goal to buy this car cash in 2 years by my 32nd birthday. And of course, a year and 10 months pass, and I only have $155,000 saved. And I remember thinking to myself, I know it seems impossible, but you know what? I'm going to keep knocking until my birthday, and we're going to figure this out, but I'm going to get this car. And I just kept again, what can you focus on? I could continue knocking until the end. Sure enough, 2 weeks later, I get a call from my broker at the time. It says, hey, I found your Lambo. It's the color you want. It's the black shaded window, the lights in the back, that black, what's it called, smoke look.
Okay.
With the wheels just the way you want them. And he says, I found your car. And I said, yeah, I don't have the money yet. I only have $165,000 now. And he says, no. You don't understand, this guy has 6 Lamborghinis. He just bought one for his wife. The wife doesn't want to drive it, so he's willing to sell it, and he's willing to sell it to you for $150. And I said to myself, is it stolen? I said, the only reason I'm going to give this guy $150,000 is if he gives me the pink slip.
Yeah.
So he says, well, he doesn't have the pink slip, but he'll go to the bank with you. You pay the $150, he'll pay the $110 to get rid of it, and the car is yours.
Wow.
So I went to the bank the next day, paid $150 for a brand new 2008 Lamborghini.
Which was like $300K around that?
$300K, yeah. He owed $260 because he had already given a big down.
Yeah.
And you know, the moral of that story is that God will start putting the right people in front of you. You just focus on what you could focus on, right? But what happens is people start focusing on the impossible. I believe one of my favorite proverbs, again, is faith in, death and life are in the power of the tongue.
Yes.
I believe when you declare something, it happens. And I believe that if I would have said, there's no way I'm going to get this car, it would have never happened. But because I said, I know it seems impossible, but we're going to figure it out. I'm going to keep focusing what I can control. It's the story of my life. God has always put the right people in front of me to make the impossible possible.
That is, the death and life is at the power of the tongue.
Mm-hmm.
What you say is what you speak out in existence, but even before what you say, it's what your thoughts, your emotions, your beliefs are what determine what you say. So you definitely had some sort of work where you believe that things are possible, you had a belief in yourself, you felt the resistance and test of like, I almost quit on this dream.
Yeah.
Because your beliefs, which was probably through just the hard work, the confidence you built, the wins, that allowed you to speak out that thing of like, I'm just going to see what it is. And you could have never guessed that this guy would have a Lambo brand new of your style out there for your broker to find at half the price.
And he had 6, right? I mean, to him, 110 was probably $10. And but my mom taught me that. She said, be careful with what you speak. And that's why with my kids, I'm very careful with what I say to them. Very, very careful. And I'm always trying to speak life into them. Even if I get upset, I'm very careful with the words because they're subconscious.
Give us an example. Like, there's going to be a lot of parents for sure, and I want to hear too, because one day I'm sure I'll be a parent. Like, when your kid messes up or did something maybe like really, really that pissed you off, how did you handle that, or what's the shift for you?
Well, words, again, death are in the power of the tongue, right? So, you never want to call your kid stupid. You never want to call them a dumbass. Like, I've seen other parents do that, by the way. It's actually very common. I've seen it. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Right? So you don't. I mean, there's a way to, which Teddy's the best at it, there's a way to talk to them about it without using words that are going to bring them down. Right? But I've always been, if you put enough deposits into people, you'll be able to take a withdrawal for them. So I think with my kids, I'm able to, the reason I think they listen to me is because they know I love them.
Yeah.
But if all you do is you're showing them hate or anger, then they're not going to take too well with.
So you were depositing them with love, and so that's where the
love,
reciprocity
and then you could
come.
withdraw that again. You could withdraw that, right?
I don't think many people think about that for kids. They think about it for business, relationships, but not kids.
I think of it with the kids all the time, and I just say, Cruz, you're not supposed to do that. Like, you can't be just letting fear. Cause sometimes they'll just start crying and he doesn't stop crying, right? And sometimes I get like, you know. So I let them calm down, and then we have a conversation about it.
Wow.
But again, it becomes awareness, right? You once you're aware of it, I know people out there that they don't even know they're doing it.
Yes.
That's why they're doing it. They have no awareness that
it's called subconscious incompetence. They don't know what they don't know.
Yep. But once you know about it, you're very. And again, my mom just was always so positive with me.
That's what's so beautiful about that, man. And I know that, and I don't know what her story was or background, but to hear that in the darkest of times and the most struggle and letdown that woman probably faced, she did not let the external circumstances affect how she wants to treat her child. Yeah. And she spoke life into you, bro. Mm-hmm. Like, that is, it's beautiful. She gave her life to Christ, and that was the life changer. Yeah. That was the light. That was the light in all the darkness that she experienced,
and
it
then she
shined
was
through
able to
her.
share that. Yeah, shine through her. She still does it. I mean, it's again, I'm just blessed to have her in my life.
It's such a powerful testament of just speak life in your kids.
Yeah.
Find ways, and I know it's probably there's a lot of tests and challenges. I don't know. I'm not a parent yet, and I know it's gonna be parts where you want to like just, just rip out, and it might not even be to them. It might have stress from work or stress from other relationships, and then you just diffuse it at them, and that's the worst thing you could do. But for you sharing that and talking about that, I know it's gonna really change some family dynamics.
For sure.
I had one question earlier, and I know we went all over the place. We're going so long. I honestly feel like we could talk for hours.
Oh, for sure.
You are a book of wisdom, book of knowledge, and not just wisdom, because wisdom it's easy to have wisdom, but then you don't articulate. You know how to communicate the wisdom, and I'm completely honored on this episode. Truly am. There was one question that really resonated earlier when you're talking about your relationship and your faith and all these things. And for a man listening right now, this would be, and women, like if you have a man, let him hear this part, or even if you're a woman, still there will be a lot of messages to this, but for specifically you being a man, and there's a man listening right now, you're in this beautiful marriage, you've had your trials and tribulations in the past, and we know that you're better, but it's not going to be perfect. What would you tell to a man that, and maybe you can use your own personal story, that maybe it isn't a committed relationship, but they're still struggling with lust and temptation and thinking that there could be someone better, or there is a hotter woman they see, or someone that they're meeting at business and now they're connecting with? Like, what can be just your words of hope and wisdom to let them know that, that they can get through it, or that they need to stay strong with that woman they're with?
It's a pattern. I think for me, when I finally became aware, I was just like, even though it seems like you're having such a great time with this person, right? It's because you haven't spent enough time with them to go through the tough times, right? Eventually, you're going to go through tough times. Eventually, things are, they're not going to be up here. When you first meet somebody, it's like, oh, it's great, everybody's great, but you're seeing somebody once a week, twice a week, maybe.
You're only going to see the good side.
You're only going to see the good side. You don't see the bad side. And eventually you see the pattern of like, wait a minute. As much as you think this is the one, no, it's a pattern. Eventually you're going to do it again, and then you're going to do it again, and then you're going to do it again. And it just, especially if you have a family, like the ones that are going to suffer, your kids and all that. And at some point, your dreams got to be bigger than all the excuses. And for me, that's why faith is so important to me. I tell my wife this all the time. I have a thing where I say, permission to look. That's why I ask her if I could look at a girl, right? But I don't know if that ever goes away.
Yeah.
But I do know that when your why's that big, you I don't want to let God down. I don't want to let my family down.
Yeah.
And that's what'll get you past that. And faith in particular, I think, is very important because it's about being able to do it when no one's looking. And if you truly believe, someone is looking.
Yeah.
Right? And that helps you not do it, right? Because, before if I can get away with it, I would do it, right? And eventually it started tugging at my heart. Like, I didn't have remorse at first for a very long time, because it was a habit. It's the story of my life. Since I was 16 years old. I mean, it was just women all the time, different women all the time. I mean, and you become, it's like a drug. Right? You become hooked on it, and then finally you realize I can't do this by myself. That's why that dream. My dream was to always be a family man. And I needed God to draw me closer to Him. I needed that dream, and that dream drew God closer to me because I knew I couldn't do it on my own. Right? Because if I did it on my own, I'd fall.
Yeah.
And that's why I think you're always going to have some sort of reliance on God.
Yes.
That's why no one is perfect. You're always struggling with something, right? Eventually you'll beat that, and then maybe something else will be a struggle, right? So, you just gotta, it's knowing that God is there, giving yourself grace, right? Because I think if you beat yourself up.
How would you, for the man that resonates with everything you just said and feels it deeply, how would you describe giving yourself grace? Like maybe they're somewhat personally developed, but not in this area of relationship. What does it mean to give grace in this context?
So knowing that it's a journey, it's not going to happen overnight. If that's what you've done all your life, like if all of a sudden that's all you've done all your life, you can't just go from, you just can't just go cold turkey. I mean, I guess you can, but the likelihood is probably not. I mean, my thing was a journey. It didn't happen overnight. And then eventually, again, you don't do something for a long time, you start to dislike it. So that could be a good thing and a bad thing, right? So in this case, for me, it was a good thing. I stopped doing it, and I realized, wait a minute, I don't need this. Before I couldn't go 6 months without it. And then all of a sudden, stopped doing it a year, then 2 years, and then wait a minute, I actually don't like that stuff. And then you realize, like, why? It's time to break that stronghold so that it stops here.
Yeah.
You're the one that changes it. That could be finance, that could be with family. It's your faith.
Wow.
The one, like Ed says, the one that changes that family tree forever.
Yeah, breaks the generational curse.
Yep.
Changes it forever. One more layer deeper on this. Strategically, this man understands to have more grace, to know to have the mindset, and that's so important. The mindset's always 80% of it. To know that you're not going to change overnight. You could, but don't beat yourself up if you're still looking at women the next day. But make maybe a small win or a small promise to yourself of, like, I'm not going to talk to them, or if they message me, I'm going to be platonic, or things like that. Because
the excuse is going to be, your mind's going to come up with all kinds of excuses on
reasonings.
Like one excuse could be like, see, you're never going to stop. You might as well just do it because it's just never going to stop. Or the stupidest one for me was, that's what success is. You're successful. Success comes with a lot of choices.
I see.
This is why you worked as hard as you have.
I see.
Because you're the breadwinner. You're taking care of everyone. So why not? And just, again, all lies that the adversary puts in your mind to make you justify why you do it.
So what would be the strategic thing outside the grace? They've been struggling, but maybe they're kind of still in the loops, and one of their reasonings are, a lot of it nowadays, especially, and I've felt this in my relationship as well on both sides, is when you're doing business and you're successful and you're working with both men and women, and you're attractive, and there's just, you also have a good energy to you, like, it's going to be inevitable in the sense of people will come into your life of, like, well, that woman's attractive or that man's attractive, and you guys are doing business, but maybe that could be a reason. So if that's happening for someone, what would be the thing that can help them start to break this pattern you talk about? What's the strategic thing they could start doing?
Great question. So structure. When you have structure, when discipline fails you, because it will, the structure will help you. So we talked about before we started this, remember I told you about that first house in 2004 in Woodland Hills?
Yes.
I could have bought it in Hollywood Hills. But I put a structure. I bought the one in Woodland Hills because I knew it was far enough from the clubs where I wouldn't want to party all the time, because I knew that my discipline would fail me if I lived in Hollywood Hills. Because in Hollywood Hills, everybody wants to pre-party at your house. They want to have an after party at your house. All the girls always want to come to the guy that's got the house overlooking the whole city, right? And I knew my discipline would fail me, and I would probably lose my business. I'd probably end up dead. So the structure was getting the house far enough that I wouldn't think about it doing it every day, right?
That's so good.
So the structure of, hey, if you know you have a problem with that, your boys call you to have a boys trip, don't go to that thing, man. You already know what's going to happen, right? So the structure is you don't put yourself in those type of situations, right? And we know what those you guys know what those structures are,
Yeah.
I mean, those situations, you don't put yourself in those situations.
That's so good. Yeah, because not everyone's going to come down to, buying a house depending on where it is in the strip or whatnot, but the structure of, if there's a once a month, business party, and you know that there's, going to be women there, or it's out at the bars, and, that's going to be one of your temptations you're going to fall into. It's like, hey, it's okay to say no to that, or to not go, or to leave after 10 so you don't stay when it starts to get really crazy, like that structure, right?
Or if you know that alcohol leads to that, at least while you beat it, right? Eventually just that structure, right? If you have a problem with that, and alcohol leads to not thinking about things because you're just not, that's one that you leave out as well,
It's good, man.
I remember one instance to this day. As I was trying to break that cycle, during that time, the adversary has a way to mess with you big time.
And they don't sound like the adversary. They'll sound like...
And the more that you want to change, the more it's going to be thrown at you. I remember this one time, it was just the type of girl that I like. Literally just there. And I still say it because I was barely getting through it. I wasn't strong enough yet. If I would have been drunk, it would have been probably game over. But luckily I wasn't. And then that helped, and then it became longer and longer. And again, if you don't do something for a long time, you start to dislike it. And you're like, man, here's bottom line. Now that I am where I am, I think back, and I was like, I was willing to leave everything for what I thought was a better situation. Now I think back at it, I was like, what the F was I thinking? Like, I was going to leave everything. Like, money didn't matter, family didn't matter. And I'll never let that stronghold get a hold of me again. Like, you just don't let it happen.
Dude, that's so much respect.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, I give you.
Yeah.
Because I'm a man.
Yeah.
A lot of men are watching this. Women are probably going to respect the crap out of you because they want men to be more like you in the sense of being able to have that structure. And like, but I resonate, and, I feel like we all have these temptations. And one of the things that I learned that actually was liberating is I read, I think 2 times now, Audible. I like Audible. The Way of the Superior Man by David Data.
I'm going to check that out.
And it's one of those, the OGs, kind of classic ones. And there's multiple books, like Dr. John Gray, Men Are From Mars, Women From Venus, amazing book. And David Data's The Way of the Superior Man. It's very raw in the sense, like, there's some interesting kind of weird things, but he has a lot of truth to it, understanding masculinity. Yeah. And the one thing, actually there's 2 things, but I'll share the one on this episode, is the one thing that really helped me understand me, and I think will help a lot of people, is the masculine energy to its core, especially when it's in the presence of pure feminine energy. It will always be attracted to that, in the sense of, you have to have the understanding that when you see a young, beautiful woman, whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, you're always going to see that young energy, right? You will always be drawn to that. It is nothing that's ever going to go away. Even if you're in the most committed, beautiful relationship, like how you are with Teddy, beautiful woman, successful, she's impactful, she's an amazing mom, you will always have that because it's not about you, it's about the energy. The key of this, though, and this is why he talks about the way of the superior man, is the superior man is not meaning that you're authoritative or dictator. A superior means that you are in control of your emotions and your energy, not the emotion and energy is in control of you. So he says that when you feel that pull and you catch those eyes and you ask permission to look, or I say bounce the eyes. I learned that from my pastor years ago. He's like, bounce the eyes, like when and I try to do that, like when a woman walks by me and I'm like, like with my significant other, like I just kind of just look away just naturally because I know she's subconsciously watching that. But the thing is that it's the power of the man to acknowledge the feminine energy, know that she's absolutely stunning, beautiful, whatever it is, but to have the discipline or the structure to keep moving forward with the one you are with. Because the truth of it, and you hit it on the head, is yes, it may be exciting, just like how on social media we always see the superficial. You see the superficial, oh my God, you guys are talking, you're amazing, they're connecting, there's energy, there's this, she's beautiful. But you're only seeing the good side, you're only seeing the 10%. And maybe that's how it was, and this is how you prove it to yourself. Maybe that's how it was when you first met the one that you're now married with. It was exciting, it was good, it was this, and then you got to the real rawness, and then you guys overcame those problems and got closer and closer, every single person like that will be exciting.
Yeah.
And that's where the brain is like, oh, but I could do this. She may be better here. She may be better here. It's like, no, you're with the woman now because you obviously found something, that there was a holistic package that woman, she might not be personally developed. She might have daddy issues. She might have this and this and this that you don't know about, because all you're thinking about is the way she looks and how she makes you feel. Yeah. So when I learned that from David Data, it completely liberated me to understand that it's okay, Jake. Like, you're a Christian man. You're growing. Like, it's okay to like find this woman attractive if you're in a relationship, but don't go to it. Yeah. Acknowledge it and keep moving forward. And that is something that just completely changed my life.
You know, son, I don't know if you remember this in Think and Grow Rich, which is just an amazing book. You know, I read it, didn't read it till 2020. Like Grant's and like Ed, like everything that was in this book, I'm like, wait, I've kind of experienced most of this. And I don't know what chapter it is, but it talks about the reason men become successful in their 40s, and that's really when they have their poof, is because they stop chasing women.
Yes, that's
and
it.
all
Towards
of a
the
sudden,
end of the book, I believe.
Yep, that energy that
sexual transmutation, I believe.
That energy that they used to waste, I don't know if you call it waste, but expend, is spent on that. They put it towards something else. Yes. Right?
That's
and now
exactly it.
And when I read that, I was
he was talking about this in the 1920s or whatever that was written.
Well, and that's the thing, right? He literally interviewed all these successful people. What was it, like 40 of them? Yeah. Which would, in this case, in this year would be billionaires. Back then, they were millionaires. Yeah. And they all talked about the same thing, and that's what they all had in common. And yeah, it's just, you know, you take that attention and you put it somewhere else, and you could do some amazing, amazing things.
And it's a prime example with what you've created.
Yeah.
I just think that part of your life and that message, continue to amplify it. Yeah. Men and women resonate with you. However, the men need to hear that, because you're not just coming in and saying, hey, I'm a relationship coach and I've learned these things. It's like, no. Once again, dude, you're a walking, living example. You need to express that more, because I know there might be the most amount of messages coming through this to you, which you should be messaging this guy on social media. Let him know how he's impacted your life. You know, connect with him. We'll talk about all that in a second, because we're going to be wrapping this up. Yeah. But that right there is going to change lives, because in a time like now where there is so much instant gratification, there's so much comparison, and we know comparison is a thief of joy. And if you can easily compare yourself or compare your significant other to another one that you see on the wall, and within a split second you're thinking they're better because they just have a better angle and look, and now you're losing your joy because there's that instant comparison. Like, we need people like you that are, you know, and my mission is to do it, but I'm younger, so I'm going to do it in a different way, and I'll resonate a different way. But I believe you have a mission on that maybe you don't fully even understand yet, on how you're going to impact relationships, impact masculine and feminine energies. Yeah.
No, I believe that, and you know, again, like you said, your test is your testimony. So yeah.
Dude, this has just been, I think we almost went for probably over 2 hours. I don't even know, but this has been so amazing.
We Joe Rogan style.
Joe Rogan style, I know, and I wasn't even planning to do it like that, but you know, when I'm able to extract such beautiful wisdom and knowledge and stories, and I realize that takes time. Yeah. But hopefully it's things that, you know, never, that you won't find anywhere else. And if this could be that space, then I'm like, hey, let's go 2 hours. Yeah. Man, is there anything that you just, like, you know, as we wrap up here, anything you want to share, any like last thoughts, or like something, you know, for the listeners?
Yeah, sure. So one thing that we didn't talk about is, for me, the areas of my life that I continue to try to improve on, because again, in life, you're either growing or dying, right? Mm-hmm. So number one for me is faith. Number two is fitness of the body and mind. Yeah. Number three is family. And number four is finances. Now, before you ask, well, why are you choosing fitness before family? Mm-hmm. Well, because if you're not feeling good about yourself, and if you don't have energy to pass on to your family, it doesn't matter how much love you have for them if you're constantly tired. Like, if you watch me on Instagram, I'm constantly playing with my son. We're running around, we're having a good time. It's because I'm taking care of my body, right? And I'm also taking care of my mind. That's why it makes me a better man. And then family, right? So faith, fitness, which is body and mind, family, and then finances. Now, what you got to understand is that if you want to be great at any of these areas of your life, you're going to have to become obsessed with them, which means that the other areas are going to get hurt. But the good news is that during our life, different areas of our life will begin to spike.
Yes.
So, in fact, I just posted something on Ecclesiastes where it says there's a time for everything, right? There's a time to be a parent. There's a time for your finances. There's a time for all that, right? So during your lifetime, different areas of your life will begin to spike. So the idea, or what you want to do, is you want to identify which of the areas aren't spiking. And as long as you identify the areas that aren't spiking, then you make a conscious effort to just make incremental improvements. And as long as you do that, you don't allow that area of your life to die off.
Yeah.
The last thing you want to do is do what I did when I went cold turkey and I stopped working on my fitness, on my mind, because eventually when you don't work on something, it dies off.
Yes.
So what happened to me in 2016 is that pillar came crumbling down. And when that pillar came crumbling down, it caused the other pillars to come crumbling down. My faith crumbling down. My family crumbling down. And then it almost crumbled the one pillar that was spiking, which was my finances.
Yeah.
So again, if you want to be great at something, you have to become obsessed with it, but just identify what areas of your life aren't spiking, make incremental improvements on that, and you'll be growing and you won't be dying.
So
in all
good.
areas of your life, you got to be intentional about that.
Being aware, making the small incremental shifts. People think they have to be putting multiple amounts of energy here, here, here. And it's like, no. Like focus on the one that's growing significantly and put a lot of energy, but still put little, sprinkles of energy in other place to make sure just enough that it's not, it doesn't have to be spiking too, because there's probably only going to be really one area. Maybe if you're, like something beautiful is happening, 2 areas spike. One's going to need majority of your energy, but the other areas need to just be sustained so it doesn't crumble, which then causes everything else to crumble.
It's just like incremental improvements. Like if you haven't worked out for 20 years, of course you dislike it, but don't try to go 6 days a week.
Yeah.
The first week, don't try to work out for an hour. Like just work out for 10 minutes. Go walk around your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then eventually just make incremental improvements and you start growing and you're not dying. But if you don't work on an area of your life, it will die off, right? And again, my experience.
Yeah.
My fitness of the mind came crumbling down. It caused that thing to cause all the other pillars to come crumbling down. Luckily, I was able to catch it in time because I knew what the problem was. I needed to work on my mind.
Wow. What a way of ending this thing with that wisdom.
Yeah.
I mean, if there was nothing else you guys took, that enough would be good. But
awesome.
My brother, how do people find you? You talk about Skyline and this amazing way that your mission is to help more 7-figure earners be birthed than any other sales company out there. I know there's people out here that might be like, gosh, I might want to learn. I don't care about the money. I just want to learn from this guy.
Yeah.
How does that work? How do the people find you? How does it work?
So you can find us at joinskyline.com.
Okay.
You can go on Instagram, joinskyline.com. And what I believe about both opportunities that we have, which is the solar side and the home security side, is that they're both recession proof.
Yeah.
And fear sharpens listening. And what happens when fear comes in, people are reminded of what matters most, which is their family, their home, and obviously they're scared, so they want security. And then the other piece is the solar part, and we do a bundle package. And solar is the same thing. It's a recession proof because no matter how broke you are or, economies is crumbling down, people need to pay for power.
Yes.
And solar allows you to cut that power bill in half, and it's no cost. You literally are taking the power bill and you're cutting it in many cases, giving them a discount on that where they're going to pay less for solar than they would with power.
So it's like an irresistible offer. Like you just got to know the skills, learn the benefits, but also the emotional reasons, and you're going to crush it.
And what I love about it the most is that as long as you have a willing heart, you can succeed at this. We can teach you everything because we can teach you the skill set. Again, I go back to me, 15 years old, couldn't complete sentences, sweating. And in fact, one of my guys that just started with us 6 months ago, I love the guy so much because he reminds me of me so much. And he started about now it's going to be about a year. But when he first started, he couldn't complete sentences. He was a chef, had a hard time, very timid, and now he's our #1 sales guy in the company on the solar side. Brought his family over from the Philippines. When he first started with us, he said, "Hey, my dream is to bring my daughter and my wife to the U.S." And he worked his butt off, and now he's making 70 grand, 80 grand a week. It's
gosh,
pretty cool. Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
So, and then anyone in the nation can do this, correct?
Yep.
So can it be done? What if they're not in California or
Yeah, no, we're nationwide. So pretty much, and then we have programs where as long as they're a good fit, we'll fly them to areas where I'll put them with our top guys. Because see, again, it goes back to common sense and drive. You need 2 things to make 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures a year. You need to find an opportunity that allows you to make that kind of money.
Yes.
And then the second thing you need is you need to find someone who's done it before,
yes,
who has a vested interest in your success that's going to help you do it.
Yeah.
If you look at the story of my life, that was it. I found an opportunity that allowed me to make that kind of money, because $70,000 a year at 21 years old, there's only so much money I would have made at that call center. Like the most I probably could have got to, maybe by 28, I could have started making 250 grand, but I wanted to make 100 grand at 21. I didn't want to wait 8 more years to make 100 grand. So I found an opportunity that allowed me to make that kind of money. And then I found someone who was willing to teach me, which was the VP of sales, who had a vested interest in my success, to help me do it. And here we are today.
And there's a lot of very, very well-equipped people that are listening right now that are on the wrong vehicle. And that's when they get capped out, maxed out.
100%.
And so all they need is the right vehicle and the right mentorship, opportunity mentorship, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And now they're just going to take off. And I believe it, man. I believe in it because I believe in you. And I believe that you have, if I was to work with you and, be part of this, I believe in it because I know that you have my best interest in mind. So you're influencing me, not manipulating. Best interest of yours would be you're going to manipulate me and you wouldn't have a company this size.
Right. Yeah.
But you truly care about the person's outcome first. And that's, gosh, there's some people that I could see right now that if they joined you listening, they would blow it up. And maybe this is just the opportunity that they've been waiting for, that they tried some other things and it wasn't working or it just didn't feel right. And now they could come in here and start with personal development and the paycheck comes from behind.
Yeah, and that's what I love about what we're doing too is, especially now with personal development, it's everywhere, right? And you can pay for different master classes. And the problem is most of the people that are doing it, they don't have a vehicle to show you on how to make the money now, right? So the beauty about Skyline is we're going to give you the education, but then while we give you the education, we're going to say, here's the vehicle. And why that's so close to my heart is, again, it goes back to my story. Remember the call center that I worked for?
Yes.
They worked on my mind. Every day for an hour.
For an hour.
That's why when you join Skyline, you're going to get a lot of personal development, because I want to give back the way that call center gave back to me. And then I'm also going to show you, here's the vehicle for you to knock it out and change your family tree forever.
Wow. We're gonna have to find a way to have some synergy. I train on optimizing influence and sales. It's like my master workshop.
Oh, nice.
So I didn't know that you did that. But for people listening, join Skyline. That's where you find them.
And then if you want to find me on my personal one, it's at Tedwinator.
Tedwinator.
TEDWINATOR. If you're wondering why I have the name Tedwinator, it's because my wife and I used to share our account.
Oh, okay.
And when she became big on Housewives, she started her own account. So I said, well, can I have the old account? She said, yes, as long as you don't change the name.
Oh,
and you keep it Tedwinator.
Teddy and Edwin.
So there we go.
I heard, by the way, random thing, that you were MySpace of the week, person of the week.
I was
back on MySpace. Let's finish it up with that. You got to share this real quick.
Yeah. Where'd you find that one from?
I just, through the grapevine.
That was a nice little win under my belt. I was MySpace Man of the Week. I forgot how I even got on that thing, but they got a picture of me, and I was, looking pretty ripped, and I ended up winning it. So I think that's awesome. Why Teddy doesn't let me have my own.
Okay, yeah,
right.
MySpace days. Anyways, brother, thank you so much for sharing this. Once again, I acknowledge for the man you are. I acknowledge for the people that have been impacted and will continue to be impacted in ripples of that through your wisdom, through your stories, through your experience, for not saying no, for not taking, failure as an answer, and also letting your faith carry even through the toughest of times. Oh. So many beautiful things, brother. Yeah. Find this man, send him a message, let him know how he impacted your life, and learn more about Join Skyline, see how he could help you, or whatever feels best. But at the end of the day, find this man and let him know the impact he created. Until then, guys, I just want to say, as we wrap up here on the Strategic Life podcast, the one thing I could say is that if you're here at the end of this episode, this is going long, please just share this with someone that you know that his message can truly just give the shift. Give the shift in the paradigm that they've been believing. Send this to them. Let them know. Send them a personal message and say, hey, this is a long one, but it's one that's worth it. Think of it like watching a movie or listening to a movie, but even better. And send it to them and let them know why you're thinking of them, because that truthfully can be the one thing that just sets them on a whole new path. And his message, you already know that. So that's all I got to say. Until then, go create your strategic life, and we'll see you in the next episode. Talk soon. Great work, brother.
Awesome. Thank you.